I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast live over the Lunenburg Public Access channel, on Facebook Live on the Public Access Facebook page, and will be uploaded to the Lunenburg Access YouTube channel after the meeting. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and are those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. As we begin tonight's meeting, I just want to identify that the town manager is not with us this evening, as she is out sick today, and the assistant town manager had a previous commitment and also is not able to be here. Also, we are aware as we go through some of the ARPA requests that we've received a series of communications from several members of the community who have questions for some of the individuals who will be presenting tonight. So during the presentations regarding the ARPA requests, we will provide, following the presentation from the different organizations, and then following board questions and comments, we will provide an opportunity for the public to also ask any questions or comments during that time, so that way, we have a pretty hefty agenda tonight. I would just kindly ask that we consider the statements that have already been made, and that those who come forward to give additional comments or statements, that it's something I would urge that during the meeting for that to be different. However, during public comments, anyone can say anything. We do have a 3-minute limit on the public comments. Are there any public comments this evening from the board?
Yes, do I go first? Mm-hmm. So I just want to say I'm really happy to hear and see that the abatements, property tax abatements are being processed, being reviewed. Letters are going out to folks, and I want to thank the Board of Assessors for putting in the extra hours to get through 400 plus abatements. I heard today that they're targeting the 15th to complete those. So I want to be sure to thank them for the extra work. I know this was incredibly painful for many residents, and I think it's important that we do all we can to make sure this never happens again. And I look forward to the final investigation report to review that and possibly identify other things that can be done to prevent anything like this ever happening again.
Thank you.
Just to add on to that from the Board of Assessors meeting today, for those who may be wondering, after you get your letters, those will be processed through the tax collector's office, and you will be receiving interest on any money being returned back to you. And if you don't agree with anything in the abatement, you have 90 days to talk with the assessors further, or the deadline is 90 days to file a further appeal with the appellate tax board. So that is the process that will be followed. On other public comment, I want to congratulate all the graduates of Lunenburg High School for their graduation ceremonies this Saturday. For us, they were the first group to graduate, having fully gone through the entire 6th through 12th grade at the new school. So that wasn't, I don't know that I was really recognized on Saturday, but they are the first class to do that. And then having the fact that they've gone through COVID, I thought it was just appropriate that it was rainy and they did not get the best of days, but they made the best of it, and I congratulate all of them. And I want to thank everybody on the school department, the school officials, superintendent, the school board, school committee, I should say, for inviting us, and all the parents and grandparents and family and friends who stayed out in the cold and rain to, see the ceremony through. One last note, I just want to know, only because it's been such a popular property, and with the Lane property being added to conservation, that I just want to pass along that Sandra Lane, whose family we worked with to obtain and acquire the land, actually passed away last Monday. I did offer my condolences to them and thank them for working with the town to get what is a property that many people who use the conservation trails for many different reasons and purposes all love, and thank her for working with us to get that to occur. So thank you.
So I'll echo the previous comments, and I also just wanted to say thank you to everyone who took part in the Memorial Day service and all the residents who turned out.
I'll echo the previous comments as well. It was nice that the rain stopped. It was a little wet for the half hour leading up to the graduation, but it did subside at about 10 minutes into it, which was nice, but by then we were soaked anyway. Mr. Jeffries, you already basically addressed what I was going to bring up as far as table setting. You'll recall at the last select board meeting that I put out a call, since the water district would be here talking about their ARPA request tonight, to put out a call for any residents that had specific concerns with regard to that. I've had a lot of conversations, and I have copious notes from those conversations over the last couple of weeks leading up to the previous meeting, and also from Puerto Rico, several calls. So yes, if they would be given ample opportunity to speak, but also to the extent that somebody has addressed a point you were going to raise, just for the efficiency of time, if it's already been addressed, please table that question. If you have additional comments or questions, bring those up. To the extent that something that has been brought up to me in the last couple of weeks is not addressed this evening, I do have notes, and I will platform those issues. That's not necessarily me speaking, it's me platforming a concern on behalf of residents that contacted me.
Thank you. I also want to just extend a warm congratulations to all the graduates who graduated from Lunenburg High School. It's good to see that the tradition of that ceremony has remained intact over these many, many years, and that it largely is a student-led event. And so, it's excellent to see so many well-versed students come out of the school system with a lot of promising futures ahead of them. And so just want to extend that congratulations to those graduates and all the parents and family members who supported the students to get to the point of being able to graduate. Also just want to acknowledge the line striping project that has been delayed since last year is now underway. Several residents may notice that their roads have already been striped, which is a great thing. And just as an advisement, that we landed ourselves in this position because we have an excellent pavement management plan, but we had separated the line striping from that plan. And going forward, due to a lot of troubles we experienced last year identifying vendors, it will be a comprehensive plan that includes that line striping, so that way we don't find ourselves in this position again, where we're looking to get roads with proper markings for 8-9 months. Are there any public comments this evening from the public? Yes. So please be sure to state your name and address.
I hear some coupling here. My name is Lars Widstrand. I live up on Sunny Hill Road here in Lunenburg, and I just wanted to briefly talk a little bit about our solar farms, Nexamp, behind the Twin Baptist Church, and the one up at Settlers Crossing in Lunenburg. I signed up with them a long time ago and was finally connected to the Settlers Crossing plant at the end of 2022. And prior to doing that, I had sent in a year's worth of bills or a summary statement from Unitil showing my kilowatt hour consumption of electricity, and they would calculate what I needed based on that. And lo and behold, the bills came in, and they were a lot more expensive than what I paid for Unitil and First Point Power. And I have, over the months, built up a credit with Unitil on these solar points from Nexamp. So I called them in beginning of April, and they said that, oh, it looks like we over-allocated you. Can you send in your summary for how much electricity you used. Well, I gave it to you last year, and here they are again. Oh, yeah, we'll go from 12 kilowatt hours to 7 kilowatt hours. But it can't happen until July when we put that in, because we can only do these changes every quarter. So you will be billed the original amount up till that time, and then it will take 90 days, so basically I will be billed the full amount until October, at which point I probably have a balance with Unitil of about $500 that Unitil cannot pay out because they're under law cannot do that. That's locked due to mass laws. And I asked them to tell me how they came up with these numbers and if they can specify the bill. And under neither of my conversations or emails with them can they come up with a number. I cannot get a kilowatt hour number for what they're crediting me for. All I get is a dollar amount, and it's gone from 130 to 240 to 260, and then varied around the 260, 240 throughout the year. And they say that, well, when the sun shines more, we generate more power, so you get more credits, and therefore your bill goes up. But again, they can't tell me how many kilowatt hours it is they're generating or the number of panels they allocated for me, what the nominal effect or power output of these panels are. So after a lot of back and forth where I cannot get anything from them, I decided to cancel my contract with Nexamp because I don't see any savings. And that again, they would report it to Unitil in, sorry, my time is up, but I'll give myself another minute. They cannot report that until July, and I'm on the hook till about October to pay these bills, and they will not go down because that reallocation will not go into effect. So I want to urge anyone and everyone who has a Nexamp contract, go in and look at your bill, look at the power consumption numbers, and talk to Unitil. I know everybody has bad things to say about Unitil, but I must say that their customer service representatives have been very helpful and very accommodating when I presented this issue with them. And unfortunately, they are locked in with certain rules and regulations of mass law as well, so I just can't bail out of this. But many independent people have told me, if you don't own your own solar panels, don't do it. And again, anyone who has a contract with them, please look it over, see what you're billed, compare it to what you had before, and see if it really makes sense to you. To me, it does not. And maybe I'm in the wrong. It's happened before. But I'm going with my gut feeling, and that's to dump them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments this evening from the public? Any online on Zoom? All right. Let's see. No announcements this evening, communications from the boards. So we're going to go to our 7:15 appointment. This is a public hearing for a Class 2 auto dealer license for J&E Realty Enterprises. To the clerk, would you mind reading the public hearing notice?
The licensing authority will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, June 6, 2023 at 7:15 p.m. at Town Hall, 17 Main Street, 2nd floor, Lunenburg, MA, on the application submitted by J&E Realty Enterprises, Inc., Jax Nassif owner, doing business as J&E Auto Sales for a Class 2 auto dealer license. The license is to be exercised at premises located at 383 Whalum Road. The applicant seeks to store and display 18 used motor vehicles for sale. Proposed hours of operation are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Saturday, closed Sunday.
All right, thank you. And will the applicants please come forward? All right.
How are you guys?
So if you wouldn't mind stating your name and the reason why you are before us this evening.
Yeah, my name is Jack Nassif. I'm the owner of J&E Realty Inc. I'm the owner of Jack Garage on Lunenburg 383 Whalum Road. The reason I'm here, I'm applying for Class 2 license to buy and sell car. That's it, so.
Okay. I'm going to open to the board for any questions or comments the board may have.
Any questions?
The only question I have at this point is, so there's 30 parking spaces. I was looking back, this goes back, I think, to April even, maybe. 30 parking spaces total, but you're only going to have 18 cars for sale? Is that?
I believe
Any
so.
one time?
Basically, Greg Roy, he was my lot plan. He did the lot plan for you guys, and he was here last hearing, so we asked before for 35 cars, but I don't know what exactly he gave me right now, so.
I guess I'm just asking, how many cars will be sitting there for sale, so that, those parking spaces will be?
It depends how you guys give me. Give me 18, maybe you're gonna put 10, maybe you're gonna put 5.
I believe the application now says 18.
I'm not going for the high number. So I'm asking for the high number basically, but just
up to
in
18.
case.
Yep.
I have a lot of room over there.
Okay. I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Alonso?
Have you ever had a Class 2 license selling and buying cars before?
Yes, I've been still have an active license on Dudley, Mass. since 1998.
Okay.
Still active till now.
Any issues with that license ever?
No, whatever, no. I used to run 2 gas stations back in Worcester and Dudley, so that's my third business.
Nope. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Just for the record, obviously, they have a special permit that was decided in February of this year by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and also the site plan was approved by the Planning Board earlier this year as well. I have no further questions, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank
So
you.
I was going to bring up the site plan that was approved. I guess I was also curious about the other businesses that are in that area. So are they going to have parking in separate areas still, or is that something that
On
they
my
consider?
property, you mean?
In that, because there's,
On
if I
383.
know the property, I'm thinking about it correctly, there's a couple of businesses there,
Yes.
and the parking is pretty much
Yes,
shared, right?
everybody separate. So
Okay.
basically, yeah, we have a hair salon and we have the garage.
Right, right.
Yeah, we have plenty of room. So basically, the law plan is made on basically on each side parking for the garage and for the salon.
Okay. Well, since all of that was reviewed and
Yes,
approved,
yes.
I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Yeah, having reviewed the documents and the previous members of the board have addressed what I was going to ask, so I'm good.
Yeah, so I thank you for coming before us with this request. I think the key point that Selectman Imke raised, and I just want to kind of reiterate it, is that you had 2 approvals here, one from the Planning Board and one from the Zoning Board of Appeals. But the prevailing one is the lower threshold. So although you have a site plan that identifies that you're going to be able to hold like 30 cars roughly on the lot, you are restricted to having 18 vehicles for sale at any time.
Okay.
You fully understand that?
Yeah, definitely I understand. Yeah.
Okay.
But basically, give me the license for 30, right? Just in case, you know what I mean? But for sale only for 18?
No. So what it is it's 2 different approvals.
Okay.
You can only have 18 vehicles, period. That's your max.
Okay.
So the 30 was what was
That's it.
requested. It was what I believe the ZBA had authorized, but the planning board, their approval was only for 18.
Okay.
So that's your limit,
Yeah.
is 18. All right, so long as you understand that you can have 18 vehicles for sale at any given time, and then your additional vehicles for your employees. I don't have any additional questions for you. Is there a motion to approve?
Before we do that, I want to see, according to the, unless I'm reading it wrong, according to the ZBA special permit, their condition number 4 has a limit of 30 cars may be displayed for sales and storage and parking. I don't want to give the applicant the wrong impression. I just want to look at the documents. And people are saying 18. Can somebody point to me where it says 18?
Sure. In the Google Drive, if you go to the first document that's identified as April the 10th, 2023 decision, this is the planning board's site plan approval. And if you scroll down, it's toward the very end. If you scroll down to item number 17,
Okay.
the applicant would not have more than 18
Okay.
vehicles for sale
All right,
inside the name.
thank you. All right, I just wanted to see. But this is, okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant? Since this is a public hearing, are there any questions from the public related to the applicant? Yes. If you wouldn't mind just stepping to the side so Mr. Passos can.
Thank you. Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. Just to clear for a few people in the audience, the discussion you guys just had as to the 18 to 30. I'm trying to understand the process. Why would you go to the Zoning Board of Appeals if Planning Board is already, if you're going to go with the approval that the Planning Board set in place? I thought it was the other way around. You get an approval from Planning Board, you appeal it to Zoning Board of Appeals. Am I correct in that or wrong? I'm just trying to understand the process.
Well, I will offer, and I am not a planning board member or a ZBA member, but my understanding is they each have their own authorities, that the planning board approves the site plan, and the special permit for doing the business comes from the ZBA. And so insofar as what the site plan says that they could hold, maybe there may be a conflict with what the special permit gave, and that's why they went back to the planning board, it looks like.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments from the public? All right, we will close checking online, we will close the public hearing to the board for any other discussion. If not, then is there a motion?
I move that we approve the Class 2 auto dealer license for J&E Realty Enterprises, Inc., Mr. Jack Nassif, owner, as presented.
Second.
All right, any other discussion on this? All right, as many as are in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. All right, the motion passes. So the next step would be for us to sign off on the license, and then that should be available for you to pick up tomorrow from the office.
Okay, I have to sign today.
Nope, you just come tomorrow, check in with Elaine, and she'll.
Call before you come, just to make sure everything's in order.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right.
luck.
Thank you. All right, next on our agenda, we have ARPA requests from North Central. So we have ARPA requests. Several ARPA requests came to the Select Board, and I just want to set the groundwork for what ARPA is. ARPA is the American Rescue, I think it's Plan Act, and so what it does is it provides a variety of funds to, within the ARPA program, there's another program, state and local aid. And so that program is funds that were given to the states to distribute out to multiple municipalities. In our case, our community received about $3.5 or so million, and so we were provided as well with frameworks from ARPA related to requests. So back in the fall, we sent a communication out to town boards and other committees making requests. From then to now, the board has awarded quite a bit of money, and I believe we have 1.17 million remaining. So what we are doing tonight is we are beginning the process of meeting with several different boards and committees who've made requests, so that way we can understand those requests in more detail. I know that one question has come forward, and I just want to preemptively address it, about why or how is the water district able to receive ARPA funds from the Select Board. And the answer to that question is pretty straightforward. Although the water district is considered its own municipality and is wholly separate from the town of Lunenburg, many people may recall that the town does operate a water department, but it is a tiny department, roughly about $25,000 in billing a year. So with the ARPA funds, they are provided with guidance. There's legal guidance, with the law. It explains what the money is supposed to go for. And part of that is sewer water infrastructure. So although the water district is not a part of the town, those funds were provided to us with the understanding that the water district would be eligible to receive those, would be eligible to be allocated those funds. The state certainly had the ability to allocate those funds directly to the water district and fully, reduce the amount that came to the town. But what occurred was those funds were provided to the town, again, with the understanding that we may opt to allocate some of those funds or commit some of those funds to the water district. First on our agenda tonight is a North Central Chamber of Commerce, and they have a request for some ARPA funds. So if a representative from the North Central Chamber of Commerce can come forward, state your name and address, and then present what it is that you're looking for here tonight.
So, good evening. My name is Roy Nascimento. I serve as President and CEO of the North Central Massachusetts Chamber of Commerce. And in my role as President of the Chamber, I also serve as President of the North Central Massachusetts Development Corporation. And I'm actually here in my role as President of the Development Corporation. The Development Corporation is an economic development entity. It is the official state-designated regional economic development organization for the 27 communities here in North Central Massachusetts. We're also certified as a community development financial institution by the U.S. Treasury. We're an SBA, U.S. SBA micro-lender, and a U.S. Economic Development Administration intermediary lender as well. And we do a lot of different things really focused around working with our communities, working with our businesses, trying to grow the economy here in North Central Massachusetts. And I was asked to send a presentation in, so I don't know if that presentation is available and if it could be presented, or if I should just wing it, or?
Yep, the booth has the presentation.
They're going to start it up. You just
Okay.
want to say next slide whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. So I guess to start, I want to talk a little bit about the One North Central plan, because that is really where this proposal came from that I'm here today to talk about. Could we go to the next slide?
We can't get this.
And then the next slide, please.
Yeah.
Getting the slides on here?
No, it doesn't open.
Yeah.
So the One North Central plan was a regional economic development plan that was developed and unveiled in 2021. It was an 18-month process that we went through, working with a lot of the communities here in North Central Massachusetts. Lunenburg was involved in the process. Next slide. But the idea was really to develop a regional blueprint to help guide economic development over the next 10 to 15 years here in North Central Massachusetts. And I want to talk a little bit about the process that went through developing this plan that was unveiled in 2021. It was an 18-month process. It was a really thoughtful process, included a lot of interviews with different stakeholders throughout the region, included a lot of analysis, a lot of look at the data, market conditions. It also included a traditional SWOT analysis, looking at our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats here in the region. Included benchmarking. So we benchmarked ourselves as a region against other regions here in Massachusetts, as well as regions outside of Massachusetts that we could learn from, and in terms of our plan to move the economy forward. It included an analysis of the workforce, look at policies, incentives that we offer here in the region. It also, most importantly, provided recommendations on how we can move the needle on economic development here in North Central Massachusetts, and ultimately a plan, a workable, actionable plan that we could implement collectively over the next 10 to 15 years. Next slide, and these next few slides just showcase some of the information that came out of this plan, the SWOT analysis. Next slide. This next slide has a graph of kind of looking at different industries and the strength of these industries here in North Central Massachusetts. And next slide. And then ultimately the plan identified 4 priority industries that we should focus in on as a region. And this shouldn't be a surprise. One is advanced manufacturing, because we have a large concentration of manufacturing here in North Central Massachusetts. We're unique in that respect compared to other regions in Massachusetts and even other parts of the country. Healthcare is another priority industry. No surprise there. Demographics, the need for more healthcare, pretty much aligned with the rest of the state in terms of healthcare being a major employer. Tourism, which is primarily a lot of small businesses here in North Central Massachusetts, was also identified as a priority industry. And then logistics and distribution, which kind of surprised me, but it shouldn't have surprised me because of changes in the way people shop and buy things. The rise of online shopping has created the need for a lot of these distribution facilities to service the shopping that's done. And we've seen some of that here in North Central Massachusetts. Next slide. And then the plan is about 200 pages long. I encourage you to take a look at it. It's on our website. It's a lot of data, a lot of information. It's broken down into these 5 organizing themes, and I'm not going to read them, primarily because I didn't bring my glasses and I can't read them from here. But they're on the plan. I encourage you to take a look at them. And next slide. And most importantly, it provided a roadmap and some recommendations on how we could move forward. And one of the recommendations is why I'm here today, is to talk about this Regional Business Investment Fund. This Regional Business Investment Fund was proposed in the One North Central Plan as a way to spur real estate development here in the region. A lot of the data showed that while we've seen some real estate development, we really haven't seen as much as other parts of the state, and we need to find ways to encourage more development here in the communities of North Central Massachusetts. Positive development that would encourage, that would improve the quality of life in our region and create jobs and more tax revenue for our communities. One of the recommendations was the idea of creating this regional business investment fund, which would help encourage development by providing either no-cost or very low-cost funds to developers and businesses looking to come here to North Central Massachusetts to develop. And the idea would be that this would help kind of mitigate the costs and take some of that risk out because the data showed that a lot of that spec development is not coming out of here because of that risk-reward balance is not there. So the idea would be that the recommendation was that the communities here in North Central Massachusetts pool their resources, create this regional fund that could be used to help spur some development projects here in the region. And that's when we're currently implementing this Regional Business Investment Fund. And we've secured $500,000 from communities here in North Central Massachusetts. We've added in our own $250,000 to help as seed capital. So currently we are at $750,000. With Lunenburg's contribution, that would then get us up to $800,000. And the idea would be that this Regional Business Investment Fund, as I mentioned, would provide low-cost funds. It would be a loan, but again, 0% interest or a very low interest rate to a developer or a business to help with the project. Eligible projects would include new or rehab construction of projects for specific business operations, new or rehab projects for spec purposes, rehab of existing facilities for the purpose of enticing new business operations, new or redevelopment of existing structure projects for multifamily affordable housing. So it's important to note that we do have a number of loan funds already that we operate, but all of those loan funds are operated under the guidelines of things like the SBA and the EDA, and they're primarily for startup businesses and early stage businesses. And those are micro loans that we provide. The average loan is typically about $25,000 for a startup business or an existing business that can't get loans through traditional financing. This fund differs, again, in that it would be geared more towards real estate. The other elements of the project, of the Regional Business Investment Fund, projects must have documented support from the city or town in which it is located. So that's important. I just want to emphasize that again. This is not intended to help finance new subdivisions or strip malls. These are intended for economic development projects that would have an impact in the community. And they need to be documented. The community has to be behind it. We actually need documentation from the municipality saying that this is a priority project in our community and we support this. And this would be intended to work with other incentive programs. So this would be, the term is typically referred to as a capital stack. So there's lots of capital that's kind of utilized to help make the project feasible. So this would be intended, this wouldn't work alone, this would work with other incentives, could be a TIF, could be a loan from mass development, could be a MassWorks project that might, from the state, that might provide some infrastructure money. It could be, obviously, the borrower would provide some of their own capital. There could be other investors, but the idea would be that this would be working with other incentives to encourage that project and help that project move forward. And then priority for any projects would be given to any communities that contribute to the Regional Business Investment Fund. So while this would be a regional fund and anything within the 27 communities would be eligible, there are limited dollars. Again, currently we're at about $750,000, which, and the maximum amount of these loans is $250,000, which, certainly is a lot of money to me, but in real estate development, that's not a lot of money. So it's limited amounts of money that we have, so we're prioritizing those communities that contribute to the fund. This would be a really flexible fund. So the loans that we provide would be used for soft costs, which most lenders would traditionally not finance, but this would cover soft costs. Those could be eligible, things like engineering costs, site feasibility studies, design, architectural fees, permits, surveying, legal fees. Hard costs could also be covered by this, such as the site work and infrastructure costs or any construction. Terms would be, it's on the next slide, I think. Terms would be 5 to 10-year note with up to a 25-year amortization. Flexible, really flexible repayment terms, providing for a 1 to 3 year interest-only period, then amortizing principal and interest monthly over the remaining term. No payments for the first 1 to 3 years available while interest accrues. An interest rate would be as low as 0%, and it could go to 3%, which is still a very good rate in this current environment. So the highest rate would be 3%, and the rate would be determined based on the project, specific details of the project, how many jobs are going to be created, the location, the credit. The rate could go as low as 1%, as I mentioned, if it's in a low and moderate income area. And it also would depend on the scope of the size of the project, the location of the project, and the strength of the project investors, such as the investment, the capital investment, creditworthiness, and the impact to the community. We do have a minimum of 1 job needs to be created for every 20,000 of loan funds that we lend out, and then we do track that and we do report back on that. And then the loan repayment will be dependent on use of the project. If it's build to own, it could be up to 25 years. If it's housing or something, single or multiple tenants, could be up to 25 years. Build and sell, if it's a spec project, then it would be due on the sale. And we go through our traditional underwriting process. We do have policies in place. We have a loan committee. We have a board of directors that has to approve loans above a certain size. So we'd go through that traditional kind of underwriting that we do. We do have loan officers. Our vice president of lending is not here today, Rebecca Beaton, but she was supposed to join us. She could talk more about kind of the underwriting, but we do have an underwriting process that we go through. What I like most about this Regional Business Investment Fund is that it's revolving. So the funds that we've raised and the funds that hopefully Lunenburg will contribute towards the fund will be pooled. We'll lend that out. Again, you can see it's very, very favorable terms to encourage development and help kind of mitigate some of those costs. And as those funds, presumably, hopefully, they get paid back and the borrower doesn't default. As they get paid back, we'll revolve that out and we'll make more loans. So that's what I really like about this loan program, because 20 years from now, when I'm retired, this will still be hopefully having an impact and playing a role in helping to drive the economy here in North Central Massachusetts. So I've gone on very long there, so I apologize for going on so long. A lot of background there that you probably didn't need, but I'm happy to answer any questions or address any concerns you might have.
All right, thank you for that presentation. I'm going to turn to my fellow members on the board for any questions or comments that they may have. Selectman Imke?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Talk a little about how the funds would decide upon what projects they would fund and not. Who is in charge of that?
So that would come to us from our communities. So again, this is intended to work very closely with our municipalities. Again, we need documented support from the municipalities, and we're expecting that those projects would come from the municipalities, so that the town would come to us and say, this is a priority project for us. You know, this project is, important. We want to redevelop this project. It's a brownfield. It's, terrible shape. We know that it's really hard for the private sector to come in and develop this, but it's a priority for us, and we want to see this redeveloped. And so those projects would be referred to us by the municipality. Mm-hmm. Again, we're envisioning that this would work very closely with other incentives. So the town might be providing some incentives, or might be securing some other state incentives, like a mass development loan or a brownfield grant, or MassWorks for infrastructure surrounding the project. So we would work very closely with these other incentives. This again would not be strip malls and subdivisions. Those are
Understand.
important, but, you know, those can be handled by the.
I understand that the municipalities would be involved in the submission of potential projects, but who would be deciding upon which ones get funded?
Oh, I apologize. So, the project would be reviewed, just like any borrower. The applicant would have to apply. They'd have to submit financials, other documentation. It would be reviewed by our staff. We do have a staff of economic development professionals, and our VP of lending, as well as some other underwriters on our team, would evaluate those loans, and those would be evaluated just like any other loans that we do. And we're very flexible in our underwriting, but we do still require, we do have policies. We have to review the project to make sure that it's worthy. And then a recommendation would be made. It would be presented to our loan review committee, which is comprised of different stakeholders within the region, including some professionals in banking. And then, depending on the amount, if it's over $150,000, then it would have to be presented to our board of directors for their approval.
My concern, the reason I asked the question is, you know, I'm looking at who's already donated funds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're talking about cities versus a town like Lunenburg. So I understand that we're asked to be submitting 50,000, but, you know, projects in those cities, in Gardner and Fitchburg and Leominster, could easily overwhelm what's available. And I'm like, okay, so here's 11,000, 12,000 person Lunenburg. You know, what did we hope to gain from this? I mean, that's not a question. That's just my musing and why I asked the question. Because who decides this? I'm assuming that your board of directors are representatives of North Central Mass and in those regions. And again, I don't want the cloud of larger municipalities to overshadow it. That is a concern that I do have.
Sure. So I can tell you that our organization and the work that we do has touched all of our communities here in the region, not just the bigger cities. So we have made loans through our traditional small business lending programs to all the communities here in North Central Massachusetts, or at least the vast majority of them, including, I think we've made some loans here in Lunenburg. Some of the other work that we've done around technical assistance, tourism has also benefited the communities. I think a program like this, I think, quite frankly, this is a great tool in our regional economic development toolbox, but I think it's also a great tool in the town's toolbox, and I think this benefits some of the smaller municipalities, the towns, versus the bigger cities, because they have other programs in place, so they have their own funds in place. So I think this will certainly help them, but I think a community like Lunenburg has more to gain because you don't have quite those resources that a larger community might have.
Thank you.
If that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the presentation. So the fund is being established as a result of the pandemic. I was wondering if you could provide some background information on how the pandemic affected the North Central economy and businesses here in the area.
Sure. Well, it was a major disruption to our economy, just like it was throughout the country, and in particular, it impacted a lot of small businesses here in the region. Some of our industries did better than others. You know, some manufacturers that manufacture medical devices and medical equipment did very well, you know, under the circumstances because of the pandemic. But it certainly impacted us, every industry, and significant impact. Our team, our organization, I'm really proud of the work that we did during the pandemic. Because as soon as the pandemic hit, I think our team rose to the occasion. We immediately jumped into action. We established a hotline for small businesses to help answer any of their questions. We provided a lot of guidance around different incentives that were offered and different support that was offered through the SBA and state and federal government. We even ended up doing PPP loans ourselves to a lot of smaller, more marginalized businesses that couldn't access them through traditional sources. We did a lot of great work there, providing a couple million in very small PPP loans to help those businesses get by. So this, I think, is another extension of that, really helping to support our economy and the recovery from COVID-19. While I think a lot of things have recovered, there's still certainly some impacts from COVID-19 that are lingering, especially here in North Central Massachusetts, given given how we've sometimes lagged other parts of the state.
Thank you. So I do have a couple more. So Fitchburg contributed 250,000. Gardner also contributed 250,000, and then there's a 250,000 in matched funding. So it looks like you have the $750,000 that you were looking to initially establish the fund with. So is it currently open? Is it starting to?
So we are making loans. So our actual goal was actually $1 million. So we're hoping to raise $1 million, and so we're still ongoing trying to raise funds. But we have started making loans. We made our first loan recently, and it was a loan to in one of the communities. Again, exactly the type of project that we envisioned. It was a very difficult project, an important project for that community. They had prioritized it, and it was in their downtown, an older building, had some structural issues, and a traditional lender would not come in and be able to finance that, and it was the developer. They wanted to make sure that building got developed. It was not only the retail space on the first floor, but they also had plans for housing. They wanted to encourage housing on the top levels, and so we were able to come in and provide some financing, very favorable terms through this that helped that developer, and now that project's moving forward.
So are communities so is funding only available to communities that contribute to the fund?
So that's a good question. No. So it is a regional fund, and we have some of the other communities have asked about that as well. And the reality is, if you contribute these funds, again, they'll be pooled. It's a regional fund, so those could go towards any projects, but there is obviously, even if it's in a neighboring community, there's still, I think, a benefit for the region and for Lunenburg, because that could create jobs, that could go to a Lunenburg resident, and it helps the entire region. And again, long term, this is a revolving fund that will be hopefully playing an impact for many years to come.
So one more question. Other than Fitchburg and Gardner, has anyone else contributed yet?
Not yet.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Mr. Alonso asked a lot of what I was going to ask, and to some extent, Mr. Nizzolo did as well. So basically, just to break this down into very simple terms, there's going to be this bucket or a pool that towns are going to contribute, municipalities are going to contribute to. And then there's going to be a distribution of funds based on applications, and so essentially we're going to be competing for funds to come back with these other municipalities. And it's likely that, maybe we get more back than we put in, but it's not going to be a one-for-one everywhere. I can't imagine that it will be. Some people will benefit more than they put in, and some entities will lose, I guess. So I'm just kind of putting that. Is that a proper picture? That
I'm not sure I'd use those terms. I wouldn't frame it as winners and losers. I think the entire region's a winner if we establish this, because now we have this new tool that we didn't have before that could help fund projects. And so I'm not sure I'd use those terms. And I wouldn't say you'd necessarily be competing with other communities. Again, we have this fund, and we're hoping to continue to raise more funds to add to it over time. Hopefully it'll continue to grow. We'll be able to secure funds from other sources, just like we have with our SBA microloan program and our EDA microloan program. We had very humble beginnings when we started back in the 90s with our first loan fund, that first SBA microloan fund, and we've been able to grow our impact over the years and helped create a lot of small businesses and establish a lot of jobs and a lot of investment in our communities thanks to those small business microloan funds. So again, I wouldn't frame it as winners and losers. I think the town will benefit from this. I think the region will benefit. And overall, we think it's a real positive, and hopefully you think it's a positive, and we'll support your investment in this regional business investment fund.
I'm a lawyer. If I were making the pitch, I wouldn't frame it that way either. But I just want to understand. I mean, I don't think this is totally without risk that a town like Lunenburg would never see what it put into it come back. That's just a concern of mine that, but right now we're getting the information, you're telling us about it, and we're not deciding anything right now. But that is a concern.
Alternatively, you could also get much more than what you put in, right?
We could, but it's a bit of a, it's sort of like a casino a little bit. We might make out, we might not. So.
And to be clear, there's always some inherent risk here. So we're hoping these funds, again, get paid back by the borrower, but there's always the risk that the project fails, and so the borrower doesn't pay us back, so we don't have those funds to revolve. But we do have a pretty good track record, and we have had a pretty strong impact here in the region, including here in Lunenburg. So I think, and we do have a lot of, we'll take good care of this money, and we have a good process in terms of the underwriting, and we're very thoughtful about it, much more flexible than traditional sources in terms of the underwriting, but still we do have a process in place, and we do have to carefully review every loan that comes to us.
Thank you.
So my comments first, thank you for the presentation tonight. Very thorough, very detailed. BIFs and bids are business improvement districts, and bids are business improvement funds, are very successful. And they're successful because in the case of a bid, you're taking a certain area of a city or other urban area, and you're getting business owners to voluntarily contribute basically a self-tax. And that money goes into a fund that then those other businesses can use. Anyone who's gone into downtown Worcester lately, and we see all the improvements there, it's from a combination of bids, it's a combination of it being a targeted improvement district, and then also there being different organizations such as Mass Development and others who are contributing, as well as the local Chamber of Commerce. And this portion of Massachusetts, every community west of Ayer and east of Gardner, north of 490, north of Route 2, we all are alike in that we share a single tax rate for residential and for businesses. And what that does is it gives an equal opportunity across this region to all businesses, for the most part, to grow and expand. And so, to me, I know that I grocery shop for the most part in Leominster. I order pizza in Ayer. I tend to get my Italian out in Worcester. So I know that, the way that business works is that it's about the region, it's about the neighborhood, and that when you get communities to invest into their local businesses, that what you get is a better result. So I wholly support your proposal. I think $50,000 is not an unreasonable ask. I think that, this is building upon a proven record of success. This isn't this is not a test pilot. There's a strong history in the Commonwealth and also across the country of these things working to help promote businesses. So I don't really have any questions for you. I just want to thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Are there any other remaining questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you.
All right. Next, this evening, we have a request from the Water District for some ARPA funds. So if I will ask the Water District to come forward with their representatives. And again, please state your name and address, Mr. Birch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name's Mark Birch, and I'm the chairman of the Board of Water Commissioners. I'd like to first thank you for your congratulations on the new graduates at the high school. My daughter was one of them, and she is a third generation to graduate from Lunenburg High School. Myself and one of my parents graduated from Lunenburg High School.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. So I am here tonight on behalf of the entire community, not just the Water District, to ask for you to supply ARPA funding. I believe the reason we are asking for the funding goes beyond the borders of the Water District and encompasses the whole community. Even though the district is a separate government entity, we are not eligible for ARPA funding directly. The way for us to apply, as the chairman alluded to earlier, was through the ARPA funds that was given to the community. I feel our proposal would benefit all residents of Lunenburg and then some. So to build upon what was said by the chair earlier. Upon review of a use of ARPA funding, I came across one of the uses, which was stated to invest in water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, making necessary investments to improve access to clean drinking water, to support vital wastewater and stormwater infrastructure, and to expand affordable access to broadband internet. The funds allocated for Lunenburg could be used for clean drinking water through that definition. So the Lunenburg Water District is requesting $485,000 from ARPA funds that Lunenburg received. The request is in 3 sections to assist the town of Lunenburg and control a new emergent contaminant, PFAS or PFOA. I would pronounce exactly what they are, but I have a really hard time with pronouncing it as a lot of people do. Also known as forever chemicals. So these are chemicals that do not biodegrade, they do not break down over time. Once they are where they are there forever. So the only way is to filter these chemicals out. So section 1 of our proposal is public education to all residents of Lunenburg. PFAS is in our public water supply. It is in our private home wells. It's being used in all of our public buildings, restaurants, businesses within the community. Through research, these chemicals are found to be hazardous to our health. The health effects include decreased infertility, high blood pressure in pregnant women, developmental delays in children, and a reduced ability to fight infection, and also linked to some forms of cancer. Because of this information and developments being made along with misconceptions about PFAS, we feel that the public education would be a benefit to the community. Section 2 would be to come up with a solution through a master plan to deal with PFAS in all Lunenburg District wells. It is the district's goal to treat the resources and have a detection level of 0 at all of the water sources utilized by the district. The master plan would give a timeline on the treatment, design, and construction, and set a procedure to follow for full treatment of its wells. Section 3 would consist of pilot testing, which would include treatment of iron and manganese on the Lancaster Ave wells, treatment of hardness at the Keating well. These items need to be addressed prior to treatment of PFAS, so not only will PFAS be entirely removed, but all of the other water quality concerns that residents have will also be addressed. Currently, there are no other options to fund the request we presented to you. The Water District's current financial status does not allow us the ability to fund this at this time. Although we have revenue, these funds are earmarked for current and future projects. The largest, most expensive would be the rehab of the Chase Road water tank, which is estimated at about $1.5 to $2 million. At this time, we are not aware of any grants or financial assistance available for the request for funding that we are asking for. So PFAS is fairly new. We started in 2020, testing for the chemicals in our water system. Initially, PFAS started at a maximum allowable level of 70 parts per trillion to the current level allowed 20 parts per trillion. The proposed new regulation is 4 parts per trillion. On a recent Zoom meeting with Mass DEP, it was made clear that any level above 2 parts per trillion should lead to future treatment of PFAS. When a well exceeds the allowable limits of contaminants set forth by DEP, they are to be shut down if directed to do so by DEP, which would almost be certain. Review of current levels of, so I handed out a review of the current levels of PFAS since we started testing. Everybody has that available. And you can see in the wells that we're trying to target here that in some cases, in every case, the Keating well exceeds the 4 parts per trillion. There are some of the wells, well 1, 2, 4, and 5 are all on Lancaster Ave. Some of those exceed the 4 parts. Others exceed the minimum level of 2 parts. When I read the health concerns, I like 0 parts. I'm It is the district's opinion, as well as my own, that the removal of this toxin within our water supply should be our first priority. The public education section would include guidance on methods for treatment that are acceptable and how to get, even for a private well, to get tested, what kind of filtration system can you use. I've tried to dive into this, and I don't know where to even start with all the information that I tried to find. And I think that the public outside the district that has private wells, if they had the guidance through the public education on where to go, what types of treatment to use, I think it would be a great asset to the public. So for these reasons is why we're requesting the ARPA funding. If you gave us this money tonight, which would be great, we could start the public education in 2023 and start to work on a master plan to improve the water quality and schedule pilot testing for the wells that are in need of it in 2024. If we don't get the ARPA funding, then we have to find another way to fund this. And through how we obtain our funding, we'd have to go to the district, and we would have to somehow get the money from the district to do this. And I feel that we're looking, it's a fairly new thing, but through some of the estimates we got, we could be looking at upwards of 20 million plus for cost of treatment of all of our supplies. So any little bit to move us along would greatly be appreciated. Right now, there's currently funding available to build treatment facilities, but there is nothing for testing. And if you get tested and you have an idea of what you can build, then we're more in line to get the funding for building the treatment facilities. So I am joined here tonight by our Superintendent, Fran McNamara, our Clerk Treasurer, Christina Schwiger, Commissioner John Esposito, and Commissioner Matt Woodward. I would like to ask them if they feel that I missed anything or would like anything to add anything to this. And then we would answer any questions.
It would be helpful in your presentation before we get into our questions to explain what PFAS comes from.
No problem.
Mr. Woodward?
Good evening, gentlemen. Matt Woodward, Arbor Street. So just, Mr. Jeffries touched a little bit on the this ARPA funding, which is the American Rescue Plan Act. I know that you gentlemen up here and ladies are probably very familiar with this. I think maybe the public maybe quite doesn't understand exactly what it is, where it comes from. So it's just not a pool of money that the state threw out to spend. It was meant to build a strong, resilient, equitable recovery by making investments that support long-term growth. And I personally think that this is probably one of the better uses of this money if you go by those definitions. Whatever we're going to do here at the Water Department is going to benefit this town for years and years to come. Currently, I'd say there's probably about 70% of this town is a water taker or water user in the water district. The other 30% are private wells. And if you take those numbers and you put them to some of the other requests that you guys have seen throughout this ARPA request, I believe that's a great return on the investment of what you actually could put right back to the people. Some of these the other requests, which are great requests, maybe only affect 10%, 20%, 50%. So I just feel that this would be a great use of money. PFAS, do we want to go into PFAS?
There was something in here. I didn't find it.
PFAS is I'll give you my version of it,
It's right here.
Yeah, I thought we had that. Yeah. So this is where the, trying to pronounce it, perfluoro acid was invented back in 1947 by 3M. So it's basically made up of, it's in chemicals such as fire retardants, stain, water, grease-resistant products. PFAS is in clothes, fast food wrappers, makeup, so it's everywhere. We do have higher detects in other areas, and we're currently doing a pilot study on the Hickory Hills well, because it is the highest level of PFAS that we have in the community, and there's funding for treatment at this time for something at the level that well is at.
PFAS basically was developed years and years ago. At the time, it was great stuff. DuPont used it. It's in Teflon. It's in, basically anything that worked really well probably had PFAS in it. The problem with PFAS is it does not break down naturally by itself. It is a forever chemical. Unless it is removed by basically a remediation, it doesn't go away. It just keeps staying there. So basically, part of our proposal here on that first one we asked you guys about would be public education, which would lay all this out way better than I can. And the second one to be remediate that. PFAS isn't going away unless we physically take it out.
Right. So I do not expect, as we have more appointments coming next week, that the board is going to make any decisions tonight related to awarding ARPA funds, but certainly it's important for us to have these interviews and conversations. I'm going to turn to my fellow board members for any questions or comments that they may have.
So, one question for the chair. Do you want to take questions for all three requests at once, or should we go through one?
We can go through all three at once, whatever questions you have.
All right.
I have a lot of questions.
Well, we can always, you can do them all at once if you want.
I'll start with the public education piece. And actually, I'll start off, actually, not with a question, but a request or suggestion. If you could add more information to the website. I found it really difficult to find the level of detail on the website, like breaking out the different PFAS, AS, OA, you know what I'm talking about. I actually found a website from the EEA that lists that you can search different towns, and it breaks out every contaminant you ever want to know, historical. I had all this data from going to that website. It's easy to use, it's so informative. If you can put that link, Westfield, I think, Massachusetts has that link on their website. I think the more information you can get out there to the public, the better. So I think that's low-hanging fruit, free, cheap, just to improve the information that's available to the public. Other things, so when you talk about the education, who would be giving this? Would you bring in some?
So we have a proposal that was given to the town manager from our engineering firm.
Tie and bond.
Tie and bond, correct. And as far as the public education piece, I would agree, but low-hanging fruit gets stolen. I would like to see.
Just getting the data out. I mean.
I'd like to get the correct data out, though. I want to make sure.
Massachusetts department. It's the EAA.
I would agree with that. Only I would like to see it come from our engineering firm. I wouldn't want to take something from somebody else. And that's why we wanted to try to have an engineer design this public education piece, so.
Oh, I'm just talking about the data. I'm just talking about the reports.
I completely understand that, and I think I know exactly what you're talking about here. Yes, we can definitely look into that, and I know the DEP has a website that actually, I thought we had a link on ours. And do we have that link? The DEP link that goes to PFAS? I thought we put that on our website.
The DEP has a fact sheet on PFAS, which also very easy for,
yes.
I mean, I have chemistry background, so the long names are fine with me, but I found their fact sheet very easy to understand for anybody. The Energy and Environmental Affairs, that's the EEA site. So would someone from Tie and Bond be doing the public education, conducting these meetings?
Yes, ma'am. What we'd like to try to do with that is have Tie and Bond come in and basically put together a proposal for.
Just be sure to come a little closer to the
sorry. Put a proposal for public education. Now, like you said, you have a chemistry background. A lot of folks in town don't. A lot of folks don't understand anything about this. And this goes to people with private wells. This is just for the town in general. And to get
I'm
that
actually more concerned with people with private wells to some
Look,
point.
I agree with you, and I think there's a lot of information.
The remediation is.
There's a lot of information that's been put out and been blurred, and I would love somebody to come in professionally and speak to the town and answer. There's a million questions about this stuff that even I don't know. I think it'd be very helpful.
Yeah, and I know other towns have already gone through this education. Air has 2 treatment facilities. Westfield, I mentioned, has 1 treatment facility. They've gone through a lot of, so I would encourage you to reach out to our neighbors and find out what worked well for them. We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
I understand,
As far
but
as-
all of those, what you're talking about, is just for the public water supply. We're also talking about for people with private wells.
Oh, yeah, but just the PFAS topic in general.
Oh.
The
We have.
public education piece. And one thing, you mentioned 70% of the town are water takers?
Yes, ma'am.
I think that's, aren't there 2,500 connections in town?
7,000 population.
7,000?
7,000 connections?
No.
7,000 in population, 2,500 connections.
2,500 connections, okay. So I base it on connections, not,
Okay.
because then that flips your numbers to 30% water takers. But, and the master plan, I know there's going to be, everything I've read on this says at the end of the year, when these regulations, the draft EPA guidelines become official, which everyone expects to happen at the end of the year, there's going to be a lot of SRF funds because there are, just everyone's dealing with this, and there are places in Massachusetts where the numbers are a lot higher than this. And so everything I've read has said there's going to be SRF funds available at the end of the year for anything PFAS related, education, the pilots, the treatment. Is that your
That's not, I would go to Mr. Franco's comment on the last person. It's kind of a gamble. It's not there now. We think this is an urgent matter that we'd like to start to work on as soon as possible. If we didn't receive the ARPA money, then we would have to look into either funding ourselves or hope that some of this grant money and SRF money comes along for pilot studies. Right now, there is money for design and building treatment plants, but there is nothing available for the pilot studies. And the more ready you are, the more likely you are to get into that pool of money that everybody has for the design and treatment.
So the pilot studies, are these going to be bench scale?
I'm not sure what
Design
you mean
of
by
the
bench scale.
So they take samples, gallons of water, and go to a lab and try different media to see
Yes,
what
yes, ma'am.
works? And how long does that take?
Different pilot studies, there's a variability. There's no set definition on it. Depends on the well flow, how much is in there. A year sometimes, 9 months sometimes.
Well, the bench scale is done off-site and.
I'm
it's
sorry,
one
I don't
time
understand the
total.
scientific term on that. I can just tell you about how that
And you
works.
wanna,
Yeah, can I jump?
yeah.
Fran Acton, Superintendent. No, we don't do a bench scale testing. We do an actual, true flow test. So we run the well for 9 months, it goes through the media, and that they actually calculate the breakpoints. So they watch it. So they're going to tell us how long the filter beds will last.
Yeah.
So they're going to do a full-blown, small-scale treatment of the water at full flows. And
Different media or just?
yeah, typically they do a granulated active carbon, a resin, and I think there's another newer one, ion exchange kind of one. So
Yeah.
they usually run the 3 of them, and they see which one reacts the best. I know if you could just go throw in a treatment plant and just use the granulated activated carbon, but you really want to see your expenses. You want to do the best one you can, and so we don't want to just jump in there and put some prefabricated thing. We want to do the testing and prove the best financially equitable one to complete the project with.
So you're proposing to do both wells, and I saw the numbers for Lancaster well, that there's, all of 2022 it was below 4 for the OA and OS. But you're proposing to do both Lancaster and Keating pilots.
Well, if you look at the individual wells, our highest producing well on Lancaster was well number 5, which exceeded the 4 parts per trillion. And Keating well, which exceeded for parts per trillion almost every time. So our highest producing wells for Lunenburg exceed those levels. So we do have other wells that are lower than that level. Well number 4, that's the best quality for PFAS and PFOA, but that's the most limited use well that we have in that area.
But I thought it was the blend that mattered. There's one treatment facility for the entire well field.
There
So
would
it's
be for
not-
that.
They don't break out by individual wells. Is that not right?
Not necessarily true, because we could run each well individually. The blend is just what coincidentally happened on the day of that test. Typically, when we do a blend sample, we'll run all the wells, so we get a true blend result. Typical run this time of year is 2 wells from Lancaster Ave and the Keating well, and then the next night, the opposite 2 wells at Lancaster Ave and the Keating well. So the blend is, it could be different every day. So I couldn't really give you the exact number.
Okay. And so would this be a 50-50 split for the 2 pilots? Is it a 50-50? The 400,000, is it an even?
It would be even, yeah. When you take the full flow for the Lancaster Ave wells versus the full flow of the Keating well, they're very similar.
So the pilot cost would be the same. I'm just thinking, the master plan, it seems to me that having that in place before committing to a treatment facility, because, I know they cost millions of dollars, these treatment facilities. And then there's the recurring cost of replacing the media, which is not cheap.
Correct.
And what I've been told is I talked to the superintendent over in Air, and there are no funds available for replacing the resin.
Correct.
There's funds available for building the treatment facility, for doing pilots and all that stuff, but then once you've got it built and you need to replace that resin, that's on the town. And we're talking a few $100,000 at least per vessel.
Correct.
So does it not make sense to have a master plan in place? Because you build a facility and oops, this wasn't the right way to go for,
No, see, maybe we're misunderstood here. That's exactly what the pilot study does. During this time frame, during that 9-month time frame, different variants are chosen to basically make this the most efficient way to treat that well. So therefore, in the long term, it's the long-term cost is what we're trying to keep the lowest. By doing that pilot study, you basically try different ways of doing this and you come up with the best solution for this well. Now, when you're talking about replacing the media, it's going to have to, you're correct, that's a cost, but it's going to happen.
Oh, I know.
You know,
That's
I mean,
just,
I wish there was Fremont. There's
I just
not
want
Fremont.
people to be aware, it's not a flip of a switch.
Well, it's
This is
also-
not, you install a treatment facility and you're good to go, done.
Oh, absolutely not. It's an ongoing process that us as the water department are well aware of and working diligently on to make this the most cost-effective solution with clean water for Lunenburg.
To the master plan, I understand where you're coming from. The master plan kind of comes after we do these pilot studies. We're going to start working on it, but once the pilot studies are done and we have the information from all of the resources that we have in town, then from that will kind of evolve and tell us where we should treat first and how we go about it.
And one, I think, final question. You had mentioned, DEP sets these guidelines and you exceed them and they come in and shut you down.
Correct.
Have you actually heard of that happening? Because I have
Yes,
not.
it happened at Hickory Hills. When we exceeded the levels of iron and manganese in the Hickory Hills well, we had to put it as an emergency resource. We could not pump on that daily.
But you had other wells. And that's
Okay,
iron
but
and
what-
manganese. Have you heard of someone being shut down for PFAS overnight? Because I know there were towns that exceeded it, but
Westminster on the golf course, even the residents can't use their water.
So, yes, towns have been shut down. They have to either blend the water or the well is shut down. And I know.
okay, so they're not, blending the water is something different than, okay, we're shutting these
I
wells.
think it was Littleton. Someone ran like a mile of water main to tie it to another source, to blend it, to get the levels to an acceptable level. So if they didn't blend it, they have to do emergency treatment. I can't remember, the Freiburg Fair, they had a main source, a well, exceeded the levels, mandatory had to be shut down. They installed a full-blown treatment plant, no pilot study, just stuck in a unknown method to treat it, and they had it up and online in 6 months. So yes, they will shut you down, and you have to do some kind of mediation, some method of treating that to get it to an acceptable level.
How much did it exceed the limits? Because I've seen, PFAS in hundreds. We're nowhere near, Lunenburg is nowhere near that level.
Correct. Well, we're below the 20 for the Lancaster and Keating wells, so that's why we don't have funding available currently. If they change it and do the new proposed regulation at 4 parts per trillion, yeah, now we're available for funding.
Do you have any
We're
remaining
gonna let-
questions?
Yeah, I'm gonna,
Do you have any remaining questions?
no. I'll let-
Have you gotten any indication from any Mass DEP or the EPA or anything about the level of PFAS that would happen with local private wells? If your well tests above,
I don't think there is anything at this time as far as an allowable level in a public well. I believe they're or private well. I believe they're regulated by Board of Health. If I'm wrong, I don't.
but has there been, I mean, obviously you guys talked to the Mass DEP,
Yeah.
so have there been talks about if you have a private well that's drilled, that you're not going to be able to use that well if it tests higher, like the Board of Health is not going to allow it?
I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, that would be the whole Board of Health, a whole different thing here. So Mass DEP's in charge of the public water supplies. The Board of Health is in charge of the private wells. Yeah, in my opinion, if it exceeds those levels, then, yes, something needs to be done. It's like the same thing with the Board of Health when you test, arsenic or nitrates or whatever. They force you to, treat that well before you can sell the property. So I think this will probably be, because this is all so new, I would imagine this will be part of one of that process. You sell your property, you're gonna have to make sure the water quality is safe. So this would probably be where you put in a granulated activated carbon filter, which is also for, I believe it's for arson too, the arsenic stuff. So
Arsenic, yes.
yeah, so I think it's already probably a known method you could do it, but I think this is a Board of Health thing. But I would imagine the same regulations will pass through that way.
Okay. When you had the reduction, when you said that Mass DEP started with 70 parts per trillion and then went systematically down, every time they lowered it, what was the grace period they allowed people to get below those levels once they adopted that new level?
We were always below that level, so I don't really know that answer. I'm not sure. Usually they, like this new proposal, that the 4 parts per trillion, I think it's gonna be, finalized the end of this year, and I think they give you a year before it's fully implemented. So I think you have time to get things done. So in this case, if let's say we do the pilot studies and we have the whole full method, and the proposal does drop to 4 parts per trillion, then now we're able to get the low interest funding from the state through the SRF program. So it's either low interest, principal forgiveness, but it's actually where funding is available to us, where currently it's not for those wells. The only well it's available for right now is the Hickory Hills well.
Now, the reason I ask is because obviously, if people aren't already in the process of doing it and they're just being told, I mean, 1 year to build what I'm understanding from my colleague and from your board, a multi-million-dollar facility, and multiply that by 351 municipalities across the state, seems like a 1-year grace period probably is not terribly achievable.
Yes, I can't.
We agree with you, but that's what we're.
Yeah,
that's what we're told.
But is there, I mean, that's why I'm asking, so when they went from 70 to 20, what did they allow?
I think the 70 was a EPA limit, and the 20 was a Mass DEP, so Massachusetts dropped it to a lower level. This new proposal is coming from the EPA. The level that the EPA would like to see is 0.02 parts per trillion. This stuff is so hazardous, they want 0. They don't want any levels of PFAS or PFOA, and there's actually a few other chemicals they watch in there as well. But to go to 0 is it's impossible. So I mean, it's impossible to make everybody do it. So they're kind of backing off of what the health standards to allow things to actually to get the highest people with the highest levels to treat their water. So they can't get what they fully want, so they're settling on a number that they actually can achieve.
No
So-
further questions at this time. Thank you.
Thanks. So I know we've covered this already, but I'm just going to point it out again. One of 4 eligible expense categories for ARPA funds is investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. ARPA presented local governments with a unique opportunity to make long-term investments in infrastructure. So currently, the new EPA proposed maximum contamination level is 4 parts per trillion. Mass DEP is concerned with any level that exceeds 2 parts per trillion. It looks like we're not really meeting any of that currently. So everyone wants clean water. That's common sense to me. It's something that we all benefit from. So it seems like a no-brainer that we want to do something now to have the infrastructure to start addressing this issue, especially since these regulations are constantly being reassessed and could very well at some point be 0. So clearly it aligns with the intention of what ARPA funding should be going towards. Again, everyone wants clean water. I think it's something that we should start doing and have the infrastructure to address. So that's just my comment.
Thank you.
All set? Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so several of my potential questions were already brought up by previous speakers on the select board. I suspect that members of the public might ask the following, and this is concerns among additional concerns that have been expressed to me by residents, and maybe residents are going to address this or planned on it, but there's concern about, I think it's probably no secret to you that there's a bit of mistrust out there among the public for the water district. And again, I'm only platforming their concerns. As far as the independence of the development of the education piece, what assurances can you give the public that this education piece is going to be independently, impartially developed? What was expressed to me was in much more crude language than this, but I'm smoothing it out, was so that education is not done in a way geared towards selling the public on a preordained desired result.
Oh, I'll step right in on this one gladly. So, I don't agree with your comment of the distrust with the water district. It's the comments like that actually kind of fire me up a little bit. I don't think there's distrust with the water department. If there is, come on down. We can talk about it individually. As far as the public information, we'll put together this proposal. My goodness, if you guys have something better and you think it's more independent, let's take a look at it. I'm not set on one person, one firm, or anything. I want this information to get out to the public so they understand exactly what's going on. Over the course of time, there's been different viewpoints, Facebook, et cetera, about the different variants of this. I'd like to have somebody independent, not the water department, talk about this, period.
Yeah, and please understand, this is me giving voice to concerns that have been expressed to me. But one concern that, and this could have been a misunderstanding on my part, but several other people thought the same thing too, was I just think communication needs to be absolutely clear so that public trust is maintained throughout all of this. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. You may be, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you may be saying that there are no reasonable grounds for mistrust, but I think that there is mistrust out there, whether it's grounded fairly or not. I mean, it's been expressed to me. So if we're going to grant funds to the thing, you understand here, I want to hear robust back and forth on this thing from people that are totally dead set against this funding and people that are totally for it, so that we as a board make the most informed decision possible. That's how I arrive at conclusions. I hear the strongest arguments from the advocates of the extreme positions and the moderate positions as well. So I came away from, you came before us, I believe, in the fall, sometime around the October meeting at the Water District. I don't remember exactly when you came to us. I don't remember it might have been October. And while we had no authority over this, I mean, you were sort of asking for the select board's blessing of, like, what did we think about you doing a pilot on Hickory Hills? And I came away myself with the idea that there was grant funding available even at that stage for that one. Now, that could have been a misunderstanding on my part, but I know many people came away with that same misconception. So I just think the point here is that just making sure communication is absolutely clear and crisp all the way through is going to be critical to this whole process. That's all. And always having an ear and addressing the concerns of people that are maybe skeptical or not in favor initially of this whole thing. So it's going to serve your cause better.
So I don't know where the misrepresentation came from, but from the start of our conversations back then to where we are even today, there is no funding available for a pilot study. At that point, there was no funding available for design. It was just for the construction, which was the largest dollar value we would be spending. Now, currently, there is funding available for design and construction, not for the pilot study on how to treat it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any remaining questions? Have any remaining questions, Mr. Franco?
I do not.
All right.
At this time, but after the public speaks, I may have gone through my whole list, so I would say no at this moment.
All right. My comment, PFAS is clearly dangerous. There's no question about it. Certain communities like Air, which were connected to Fort Devens, were on the forefront of this because there's such dramatic contamination of PFAS on Devens. The drinking water you couldn't use the water for many years. On Devens, the handful of residents who live there. So, from my perspective, it's how many miscarriages are okay, how many people with cancer are okay, how many deaths from preventable reasons are okay. And the answer for me is none. And to me, what you're asking for is extremely straightforward. You're saying, hey, PFAS is a new and emerging chemical. We need to educate the public on what it is. Sold. You need to have a plan for how this is going to be addressed. You need to work on that. And you like to do it concurrently while testing our existing wells, which have known levels of PFAS. Sold. So no questions from me. I fully support your proposal. I will turn to members of the public for their comments and questions. Do you have anyone from the public who'd like to speak? Sir. Yes. Please state your name and address, and then any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you. My name is Andy Starvasky. I'm at 8 Wintergreen Court. I did have a lot of things to say, but I think they've been addressed, but I wanted to add my comments to some of the topics that came up. Ms. Emke, you were talking about the large amount of money that would be available for the clean drinking water programs, and I just wanted to say that money would be about just under $2 billion, and it is guaranteed till, I believe, FY26. I have a strong opposed to having their preferred engineering firm do the educational portion of this. Ty and Bond is basically their customer. And, excuse me. So I'm jumping all over. We talked about the one-year rollout. In the Fitch ratings that was just published by one of their employees on social media, they're saying it's going to be a 3-year rollout once these new contaminants are announced. So I wanted to clear that up. And as far as we're talking about being clear with information coming from the Lunenburg Water District, I just heard they were talking about, they didn't know back in October that there would be funding. The bipartisan infrastructure bill that I just mentioned, that was passed in 2021. So they knew that there was money available moving ahead. So there is some miscommunication. So I just wanted to bring my concerns up there. And it's frustrating to me to know that they're moving ahead with a water treatment facility that's going to cost so much money, and now saying, oh, we need more money to do other treatment facilities and other test pilots. If we needed that money to do that, I don't think we're planning ahead very well. So I have concerns. So, thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other? Yes.
My name is Sharon Jordan. I live at 77 Burridge Street. And I would like to bring this discussion back down to the very elemental question of how do I know what I'm drinking? I have a private well. My well is contaminated. It took years for us to find that out. We didn't even know. And I would like to applaud the Water District for taking some leadership on informing everybody in the town, including people who have private wells, about PFAS, how to get it tested. There are very few labs in Massachusetts that are actually certified to test for PFAS, and it's incredibly expensive. I think that this is a great first step, especially the public education to everybody in the town, and I'd like to help if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, I don't know if you stated your name and address at the very beginning, or if I missed it.
She did.
She did?
She did,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
It's Sharon Jordan, 77 Burridge Street.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do we have any other public comments this evening? Yes, Mr. Esposito.
Yeah, I'm John Esposito. I'm also a water commissioner. The district is in the process of coming up with a town-wide educational plan. It's pretty hard to do that, but we're going to get it done. The other thing is that people don't realize where PFAS is, I don't think, because they really do need to be educated. All you folks up here right now are all sitting right on it. It's in the drapes, it's in this microphone, it's in the rug, it's in all your clothes, it's all in the chairs you're sitting in. It's in everything, and it's never going to go away unless it's treated. Now, if you, ladies and gentlemen, can think of a better way to spend that ARPA money than to guarantee the people of the town of Lunenburg safe drinking water into the future, I'd like to hear it. What would you do? You all have children. They all take showers in the water. They all drink it. Their mothers prepare their food with the water. They wash their clothes. They wash their pillowcases. Their children lay down at night and go
Mr.
to sleep.
Esposito, please be sure to speak into the microphone.
Children go to bed at night laying on the pillows that are washed in the water that has PFAS in it. It's everywhere, and it's not going to go away. And the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost. I don't think we should wait at all. We want to get it done now. We want to get ahead of it. We want to protect the water takers in Lunenburg. I don't know what, I can't believe there's even a problem here with allocating this money to protect these people. These people are going to be drinking poison, and it's not going to be long. Some of them are probably drinking their limit of poison already. They should all have their wells tested if possible, see what's going on, but you fellas and ladies should get with the program and do what you can do. We want to get this fixed.
Thank you, Mr. Esposito. Do we have any other public comments from the public? Yes.
Dave Passios, 56 Whiting Street. I'll make this a very quick story, but it goes back 40 years. Back at that time, I was in one of my manufacturing positions as a manager. I was sent to a conference out in Iowa. The big discussion at that conference was these regulations are coming on the water running off of your property. This was 40 years ago. We know what's happened since then with stormwater runoff. What the Water District is trying to do here is get out ahead of PFAS in the same way that many businesses and municipalities tried to get out ahead of stormwater runoff. Lunenburg included jumped into studying and learning and knowing what was coming with stormwater runoff, and we're in a much better position today because we jumped on the bandwagon very early. And I totally support what the Water District's looking to do with this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments or questions from the public? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Iris Sinkel, and I live at 13 Wintergreen Court. I also have grandchildren. I want clean water. I also live in the community of Hickory Hills Lake, specifically in Woodlands. What I've heard is being proposed will drastically change our community and our way of life. I don't understand how they can think about doing that to our community. There's got to be other ways to treat this chemical that is everywhere, and they're saying it's in everything. So just treating the water is only part of the solution. So I don't know if you folks have visited our community, if you know what we're talking about, but it will devastate our way of life, and I don't get it. I don't know why that's the only option. So I'm concerned. Thank you.
Ma'am, I want to just clarify that the proposals that we have in front of us have nothing to do with Hickory Hills well. This is about wells at Lancaster Ave and Keating, which is near Shirley.
Okay, well, why are they putting blue flags on our property?
Yeah, I think that the Water District can probably speak to that, but that's a previous discussion on a previous topic. And I think, I don't want to put words in the Water District's mouth, but I just wanted to clarify.
Where maybe some of the miscommunication and the mistrust maybe?
Well, I would invite then Fran or to come forward. So, you know, in the past, and I think this is I appreciate the comment that was just made, but I want, if you can speak to a couple of things, and I want you to correct my perception of my understanding. That my understanding, and I want you to correct this, is that previously we talked about wells and how much water they produce. And at that time, the conversation was that if the Keating well comes offline to get treated, which is the current well that's being used, that there's not enough water in the supply system coming to be able to make up for it. And that you guys were looking for a solution to be able to temporarily bring the Hickory Hills well online, to be able to treat that one first so that it can act as a backup, so that way you can go through the process and treat everything else. That was my understanding when you guys came before us the first time. Can you correct where I'm wrong in this?
You're 100% correct. So right now we have, including Hickory Hills, well said, there's 3 sources of water for Lunenburg. Hickory Hills is offline, so we have Lancaster Ave and the Keating well. If the Keating well goes offline, Lancaster Ave is only capable of running during this time of year, probably 3 to 4 days, and then we're starting to get low water levels in the wells, and they're going to shut off. So that's typically when we would run the Hickory Hills well. When Lancaster Ave started falling short on capability to meet the demands of Lunenburg, then we'd run the Hickory Hills well. Hickory Hills well was only run as a summertime peaking for peak demands. It was just to meet demands. That was it. We tried to run it as little as possible. So yes, that is correct. Everything you said was correct. So looking towards the future, so if one site does need treatment, then we're still Lunenburg's fine with quantity of water. So if we have the Hickory Hills well in Lancaster Ave, we're good to go. If we have Hickory Hills and Keatings, we're good to go. So for redundancy, that's my thing. I say to my board all the time, I want redundancy. So if one site goes down, we're asking for trouble. So if we have 3 sites, one site goes down, we're still moving along. And I've always said it to my board. I want 50 sites in Lunenburg. I want 50 well sites where we're just sipping water from everywhere. And we're not drawing huge demands. Right now, everything's from Catacootamug Basin, Lake Shirley. Lake Shirley's supplying all of Lunenburg. So if we could do it, there's 3 basins in Lunenburg. Somehow if we could draw a little bit from each basin, I think everything would be better for the overall outlook of the water supply. But yeah, the main thing was redundancy, so.
Now, a couple of years ago, there was a conversation about selling water to Lancaster. And at that time, I think everyone got the impression that there's so much water in the system that we can afford to sell some to Lancaster. So can you correct the difference here? Because what's being said now is something a little different.
Well, Lancaster, that was going to be, we had a full business plan in Lancaster, and I'm very disappointed that it didn't go through. Lancaster, the original plan, it was going to be fed from the Keating well. Keating well has excellent quantity of water. So take it offline, we're in trouble. But the game plan for Lancaster was it was going to be fed from Keatings. They had multiple potential well sites in Lancaster. So the plan was they were only going to be fed till we got those wells online. Well testing was already starting to take place. I know a good well site was already found, so it was only going to be short term for running off of the Keating well, and then if that actually all went through, maybe we wouldn't even be looking at the Hickory Hills well. Maybe we would have a source from Lancaster we'd be pumping into Lunenburg. So that was the voting of that down was a very bad idea.
Just to add, that was pre-PFAS.
Pre-PFAS,
Just
yes.
be very clear about that. Those wells at the time were producing great, but the PFAS is the issue we have.
Right.
I want to give the board the opportunity to ask kind of one more round of questions if they have any, but I also see that we have Mr. Fortune online who's requesting to speak, so I want to turn over to Mr. Fortune.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. John Fortune, 59 Black Drive. A couple of questions. One, I just wanted to add to one of the previous speakers. Neshoba Analytic in air, they can do PFAS testing. It's like $475, and they would do the full thing of testing. So that's a 15-minute drive from here, and they are very good. We've had testing done there before. Second point I wanted to make, we've talked about the 2,500 connections that the Water District has in Lunenburg. And by my calculations, there's 4,337 properties in Lunenburg, so roughly half are not connected to the Lunenburg Water District. So when we talk about the Lunenburg Water District, we're only talking about half the community, not the whole community. I'm wondering if there's any plans to address what happens to any of these private wells, because certainly part of that $485,000 would be helpful for people with private wells if they also have high PFAS, to get some remediation for them. If the water district is not going to expand into these other areas where people have their own wells. So I'm sorry, so the question really was, is there any plans as part of this to expand into all of Lunenburg for the water district?
So just a little bit on the public education part, we want to tie that to the private wells, how to test it, where to test it, and what your treatment process would be. And as for the expansion of the water district, we're set by our boundaries. I mean, the boundaries could be expanded, betterments could be put in place to pay for water main extensions. So I'm not opposed to expanding the district to wherever it needs to go. Typically, that's frowned upon because you extend water, sewer, and other things like that, you're promoting development. So typically, people want to keep the water water system as tight as possible. But if people want to extend it, and if they follow the process, expand the district, I'm all for it.
Mr. Fortune, you had another question in there. My understanding, reading through the regulations, is that funds can be allocated for the public water supply. I know that there's a lot of areas where money can be used for private reasons. The law says that, we can allocate funding to pay for funerals for people who passed away during COVID. There's a lot of different areas that we can contribute money within their guidelines, and I don't believe private water is one of them. But I will look into that, Mr. Fortune, and get back to you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions from the public on this topic this evening? All right, do we have any remaining questions from the board?
I have one follow-up. You mentioned redundancy was key. PFAS is also important. How would you compare those? What's more important to you right now, redundancy or PFAS?
Yes, they're both very important, but the PFAS right now is the highest priority right now.
I'm looking, Keating and Lancaster are much lower, almost an order of magnitude lower PFAS than Hickory Hills.
Correct. The main focus of why we went to the Hickory Hills well is because funding is available now, as was mentioned by one of the people from the audience.
But the Hickory Hills well pilot's being funded by the Water District, not...
Just the pilot study.
Right.
So funding is available for the actual design and treatment of that facility. So the other wells, because of the regulations, they haven't enacted the proposed level. So those are not in violation right now. So they're not eligible for funding. Hickory Hills well is. That's why we went after that. And then when we did go after the Hickory Hills well, none of this 4 parts per trillion proposal was even mentioned. So we didn't know anything about this at that time.
But now we expect the 4 parts per trillion to come into the official policy by the end of the year, which means Keating's will be in, Lancaster will be eligible for.
Yeah, right, until that regulation.
Just, can you calibrate me on what does it cost to get a new well? Redundancy, benchmark, are we talking 1 million, 10 million?
Well, I would say just for the well site, you're probably $2 million. Then one of the largest expenses is getting a water main to it. So you're probably talking another $1 million to $2, $1 to $2 million, depending where the well is located, which we don't even know where we could find one. Then you also got the PFAS treatment, which is pretty likely you need there. So you're probably looking at, I'll guess, $10 to $12 million.
Barely clean.
So where we already have a source permitted, and you're halfway there. So.
That's it for me.
Thank you.
When was the first time you tested for PFAS?
In 2020. It was before it was even required for the rest of Massachusetts. They felt that because the Keating well was close to Fort Devens, that they put us on a special testing plan. And that's on the report you have. That's where it has the less than signs, which back then the sampling results weren't as accurate as they are nowadays. They were more basic. They didn't have that, with the 20 parts. Everything was new and being developed. But that's why we were testing before it was actually put to the rest of the towns.
So what's the urgency, if I had to ask you, what is the primary urgency of getting this treated now? What would your reasoning be?
Mostly, as was mentioned, that there's money that was put in for funding. To me, the urgency is to get it in now before everybody else is applying for that funding. So there's only so much money, and if you got 20 people going after it, the funding's better for you. You're gonna get much more principal forgiveness grants or whatever it is. If you got 500 people going at it, your little benefit to that, you're gonna get a low interest loan, but you're gonna lose substantially on what your benefit of.
So am I inaccurate in saying that the reason for the urgency is because you're trying to race against the deadline of the 4 parts per trillion? Is that inaccurate?
That's accurate for the proposal that we for Ty and Bond to do the public education, that is correct for that. I mean, the Hickory Hills well is a whole separate, that's for, big benefit in the financial benefits of, going through the state revolving fund.
And part of the public education, so when actually were PFAS first manufactured?
1947.
So that would be, let's just round it to 50 to make the math easy. So that's 73 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. But we have no idea what were in the wells in 2020.
Correct.
Okay. So I want to the reason I ask all these questions is because I want to caution people against the risk of there's PFAS everywhere and you're rolling in it and you're breathing in it and your peanut butter and jelly sandwiches have it in it and everything that you do has it in it. This has been around for like 70 years since it's manufactured, since it's been in prime manufacturing, at least 50 years. So there's probably a good chance that these numbers were these numbers for a long time. And if you look at the CDC and some other things, I mean, while it's been tied to health issues, there's no outstanding one. It's not like tobacco, for instance, that had clear evidence. So I don't want anybody to get afraid. I don't want to make a decision on fear that everyone's going to get ill and all your family and your children are going to die and be deformed and all of this stuff. That doesn't help the conversation. All right, if we have to beat the DEP guidelines because of whatever their guidelines are, then that's fine. We should address that. But I don't want people getting this overarching fear for something that's probably been around for many people their entire lives. So I just wanted to have that. This is just somebody's putting magnifying glass on this for whatever reason. And I just want to act accordingly, that's all.
So I did go to a class. It was an engineering firm. I'm not sure which one that presented it. But removing the PFAS and PFOA from water was only one process. Obviously, the first one is to stop putting it in the chemicals and Teflon and the non-stick pans and all that stuff. So that was another phase of it, eliminate its use. And then the next phase was treating it in the sewer discharges. So I'm not sure what that one's going to bring. So this could be a multifaceted treatment process that's going to go down the line. And also, part of our PFAS, PFOA testing, like I said, I think there's 20 actual chemicals you test for. We're only talking about the two main ones that the main focus. But I don't remember where I was going with that.
Well, there's always going to be contaminants that they're going to test for, and we have agencies to do that, and they do a good job doing it. I mean, I know that the Boston firefighters, if I understand the story correctly, have a potential lawsuit against the clothing they're wearing, because now they're saying,
Yep.
and I've asked, I think I've actually asked in your members of your commission too, it's like, okay, if it's bad to drink, that's ingesting it, but it's in the lakes too. So if people are boating and swimming in all the three lakes, is that bad too? Right. So, I mean, I don't know. Nobody can come up with an answer to that question. They say, well, they're in there and the chemicals we think are bad, but there's nothing really definitive.
Right. The point I was going to make, that they come up with new chemicals now to replace the PFAS, PFOA. That's already starting to be watched too. So we're testing for that already. So we haven't had detects for that are of a concerning level, but they are already looking at the replacements for those. So
thank you.
So.
Any other comments?
I do have questions, but it's not related to this specific request. I do agree with one of the previous speakers that stated that this is only part of the solution, right? So cleaning it out of the water once it's there, but obviously the bigger issue is the fact that it's getting into the water in the first place. So I don't know if there are sources in town where this contamination is coming from that we can look at and address that upstream, but it's just something that I think we should think about as well.
This is maybe getting way ahead of, I'm just curious, it's more of a curiosity. I realize the pilot studies inform the master plan. In other words, you're getting the data to inform the master plan, if I understand correctly. Is it, and maybe I did miss this somewhere, ultimately, I mean, this may be informed by the master plan, but if some sort of treatment facility is set up, are multiple well sites going to feed into a single treatment facility, or is there going to be different treatment facilities on locus of each of these wells?
At Keating's, yes, to be one facility. Lancaster Ave, there is currently 4 active wells. They would all feed into that one treatment facility, and then it would be discharged into the system.
Okay.
So they're all located together, so we would just do one treatment plan for that location.
Okay. And then peeking ahead, if you could remain, please.
Sure.
So the ask here is, at least as far as the, it's roughly $400,000 for, call it 500. Projecting ahead, this could be a $20 million problem down the line, right?
I agree. Correct.
So where's that money going to come from?
That's the whole thing of getting in the game quickly. Hopefully, if there's enough money available, then we can obtain, grants, principal forgiveness, low interest loans. Hopefully we can get some kind of assistance on that. I mean, the last round of SRF funding through the state, which is how they distribute that stimulus money, the infrastructure bill that was passed, that goes to the Massachusetts State revolving fund. They distribute that money. And when you see that report, every funding source that was given money was a treatment plan. So, and we applied for water main replacements, and we didn't get anywhere near for a rating to get any kind of funding. So that's the goal. Get it in there as quick as we can, and hopefully get funding and assistance so that it is financially doable for Lunenburg.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thanks. And then just a comment, but not a question. Ultimately, pulling back and looking at the forest. And I'm borrowing this, although it's a philosophy with which I agree. It's actually it's utilitarian philosophy. We have to act in a way that creates the greatest good for the greatest number of people, and it may not be every resident that benefits from this directly, but certainly if we need to do something for 70% of the residents, then we have to consider that. That's not insignificant. So that's just a comment, really. There's a lot to weigh here.
Yeah, for me, I think this is very straightforward from my perspective. I understand that PFAS has been around for a while, but I want to highlight that it's been a cumulative process. The amount of PFAS that was around in 1980 is not as high as what it is today. And so for the children who are living in town, they don't have the benefit of growing up without PFAS. They just have to kind of deal with it being here. And if it's one of these things, we talk about Devons and why we were even highlighted. You can't take any soil off of Devons. So because of the amount of PFAS that's in the soil, that no soil can leave the boundaries of Devons. It's just not legally allowed. And so, this stuff is dangerous. And I think the Army has recognized it, the DEP, the EPA. It's just government is always slow to react to the needs of people, and they have to consider competing interests. And so it has been a long time coming, but certainly the health risk in my mind is there, and this needs to be addressed. And it sounds like this needs to happen regardless. So if ARPA money is not provided, my understanding is that you have to find it through other means. Other means means a loan and a betterment. And so, this is one of the products I will support. All right, do we have any other comments related to this discussion? I want to just ask for speakers who haven't spoken, because we do have a pretty full agenda tonight. We have a bit more to get to beyond our 7:20 appointment here. Any other comments? All right. Thank you for members of the Water District. We appreciate that your responsiveness and being willing to come forward and educate the public tonight and speak to your request. I want to next call any member of the Sewer Commission to speak to the Sewer Commissioner's request.
It's actually going down significantly. It's stopped the problem. It stopped it in the late 80s. they may be.
Okay.
Good evening, my name is John Reynolds. I live
If I may ask anyone in the audience to just politely take the conversation to the hallway.
We have a PowerPoint presentation that maybe you could get
There's
put
a
up.
to the booth, there's a PowerPoint presentation, if you can pull that up for the sewer district.
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is John Reynolds. I live at 91 Lancaster Ave. I'm the current chairman of the Sewer Commission. And, okay. And we're here tonight to ask for ARPA funds. First of all, I was glad to hear you specifically mention Sewer Commission and ARPA funds in the same paragraph. And also, there was a lot of discussion about PFAS, which is going to have a potential impact on the sewer department cost down the road. And I'll get to that towards the end. We're asking for $200,000 for a repair of manholes and $300,000 for pump stations. If you could go to the next slide.
If I can pause for a moment.
Sure.
To the people in the hall, we're having a lot of difficulty hearing in here. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have 16 miles of gravity sewer lines, 3.9 miles of force mains, 2.3 miles of low-pressure sewers, 392 manholes, 3 flow meters, which is meters that capture the volume of sewage flowing to Leominster and Fitchburg so that they can bill us for that volume. And we have 10 pump stations, some large, some small. We have 927 connections. I know there was some discussion about this kind of thing with the water district, that 927 connections represents a little more than just that. There's 1,395 units, and with a lot of those are coming from the former Emerald Place, Arrive now. So there are many, many apartment buildings in that and Whalum Estate. And then using Lancaster Ave, the Lancaster Ave extension as an example, simply because I live on Lancaster Ave, there are 7 connections there, which represents 12 adults, 6 other individuals that are minors. So it's a total of 21 residents on those 7 connections, which is a factor of 3. And the only reason I mention that is if you take the, and I know some connections only have 1 person living in that house, some have 6. So it's hard to come up with an exact number, but just using that factor of 3, that would represent approximately 4,000 residents. Just so people understand it, it's more than just 927 connections. The average resident bill right now is $720 per year. The average commercial bill is $7,000 per year, and we're making every effort to keep our costs as low as possible. But costs are rising, as everyone knows, and rising costs do equal higher rates. All the maintenance and repairs and upgrades must be funded by the enterprise fund, in addition to paying usage fees to receiving towns, Leominster and Fitchburg. We must pay a portion of the debt that Fitchburg and Leominster incur for upgrades in their infrastructure via the 2 IMAs that we have. Fitchburg has just recently raised their rates by 7% for each of the next 5 years. An increase in rates from Leominster is imminent, plus Leominster is going to be increasing their connection fees that they charge us. So everyone that connects to the sewer system has to pay a connection fee, and a good portion of that goes to Fitchburg and Leominster. Recently, we put out an invitation for bid for operations and maintenance of the system. So we outsource that work, and those costs are expected to be significantly higher this coming year, and mostly because of the rise in material and labor costs. And due to the escalating costs, as the commission anticipates, strongly feels that we're going to have a rate increase. We tried to hold off last year, or we did hold off last year doing that, but we're currently evaluating our needs, and I anticipate that there will be a rate increase. And just as a little bit of an aside here, if a large development like Pondview is added to our system without having to pay connection fees, the sewer department will become insolvent just from connection fees alone. Manhole repairs, again, we're asking for $200,000 for that. An inspection done in 2020 indicated that 168 of those 392 manholes were in need of repair. And there are a number of reasons why manholes deteriorate over time. Bacteria causes the deterioration in the mortar, in the brick. When the brick blocks or mortar fail, the frames and grate begins to sink and eventually collapse under the stress and the weight of the traffic. Different temperatures, early, mid, late, winter and summer, the metal material interfaces will form and stress. The metal will become more brittle and under the temperature difference. The inflow and infiltration, inflow being surface water getting into the system, infiltration being groundwater getting into the system. These are caused by, in many cases, faulty manholes, which increases the cost to our user, because we pay to Leominster and Fitchburg the amount of liquid that's flowing. They can't separate the sewage from the water. This inflow and infiltration is costing additional tens of thousands of dollars a year. And even though we've had engineering firms come in and say, well, you don't really have an inflow, an I&I problem based on state averages, but we're a small system, and the impact is much greater to us than it might be, say, to Leominster or Fitchburg. Damaged manholes wreak havoc with the asphalt as the manhole sinks, cracks, and allowing water and soil to enter fractures and joints, creating large voids under the pavement. Dips, mounds, and bumps develop, leading to further damage over time. I mean, we all have had to navigate some of these manholes, especially on Mass Ave. And it actually is a little bit dangerous because some people are really trying to avoid some of those manholes. So, and it's not just the sewer users that are driving over the manholes. We all drive on them. 2A is used by many people outside of town, so it's just not the individuals with connections to the sewer system that are causing some of this damage to the manholes. The next slide. Okay, here's a list of the manholes that we would like to attack with this $200,000. As you can see, most of them are on Mass Ave, many on Richards Way and Electric Ave, and then a few others, smaller numbers on other streets. And the ARPA funding will allow us to address a substantial number of manholes, 84 of the 168 that need to be repaired. And again, we'll be looking at Electric Ave first, and as priorities might change as the project would go along, we'd have to change our priorities. We're also looking at, there was a meeting with Leominster Sewer Department, and they've used some newer technology to line some of their sewer lines, and actually you can end up bypassing the manhole and fill the manhole in. So we would be probably looking at some of that too. It's just, we do need to do a little more research on that to understand it better. So that's the manhole, and we do have, it might be a little smaller, we have maps of the specific manholes, but again, it's Mass Ave, Electric Ave, and Richards Way for the majority of them. The sewer pump stations, I mentioned we have 10 of them. Pump stations have a life expectancy of 20 to 25 years. Most of Lunenburg's pump stations are 19 years old. Construction of a new pump station, a large one, like the Dana Street or Lancaster, Leominster Road one would be about $1.5 million. The smaller pump stations, a new one would be around $750,000. During the COVID-19 pandemic, activity at the pump stations increased significantly. The run times were up, and it's obviously put a lot of additional wear and tear on the system. And there's a number of items in the pump stations that need to be addressed. In continued maintenance of the existing pump station, which we do on an ongoing basis, but again, they are beginning to age. It's critical to keep these in good working order to prevent any kind of contamination of the environment. Again, we're looking for approximately $300,000 for the pump stations, and you can see on this slide the items that we currently feel we need to replace in the next couple of years. Again, as operations continue, some of these might change, and we do have right now a capital plan of about over the next 10 years of $1.2 to $1.3 billion, which is approximately $120,000 per year. Our system is getting old, and we do have significant maintenance costs. As I mentioned, the majority of the system is 19 years old. We have, if you could go to the next slide, please.
No, that's it.
No, there should be one more.
Oh,
Yep. As I mentioned, we have significant obligations to Leominster and Fitchburg via the IMAs. We pay connection fees, user charges, and a portion of their debt service, and that's hard for us to project out because we don't always know any of the capital expenditures that they're going to have to make that we will have to contribute to pay for. As I mentioned, Fitchburg's already raised their rates by 7%. Leominster will be having an increase. Right now, the betterment revenues are currently less than the debt service for the construction of the sewers. So we did have to borrow some money from retained earnings this coming year, I'm sorry. We do have multiple line items within the existing budget for numerous functions, repairing pump stations, maintenance, repairs, line jetting, manhole repairs, meter pit maintenance, equipment upgrades, and engineering and administrative costs. However, the budget right now only allows for approximately 8 to 10 manhole repairs manually, and I mentioned we have 168 that it's being recommended that they be repaired. And for the pump station, one of the large expense items will be generators. As they get old, they will have to be replaced too. And I mentioned retained earnings. At the end of 2022, we had $2 million in retained earnings. 382 was utilized to supplement the operating budget this year. 36,000 was placed on the Capital Stabilization Fund, and 1,000 put into the OPEB for a total amount of 419,000. And in the event of a catastrophic failure of a pump station or a significant capital repair, we would have to use retained earnings for that. So we don't want to keep tapping into our retained earnings to work on the manholes and the pump stations. So we have to, as far as the benefits go, I mentioned that, I think some of you have different views about how to look at the number, but there's 36% of the town population is on the sewer system, plus or minus 36%. Everyone in town drives over these manholes. People from out of town drive over these manholes. As far as other funding, we have asked for a $300,000 from the state earmark program, but I have no idea what the status of that. Maybe someone on the select board might know.
What?
Well, we asked for $300,000 for pump station repairs from the state's earmark program. And I really don't know what the status of that. I would rely on Heather to.
I don't know that I've heard either.
Okay.
We haven't heard.
Other funding, like the water department, there's always borrowing money, but we'd be reluctant to do that. And that leaves us with a rate increase. And I really don't see how we can prevent rate increases several over the next few years. So any money that we could get from ARPA would be well spent on immediate needs, the manhole repairs, the pump station repairs. As far as the time frame goes, if we were to get ARPA money today, with the bid process, we probably would be able to start within 4 months and probably complete them all at some point next year. The pump stations, the specific items I've listed would probably be done within 2 years, depending on who we end up getting for a new operations and maintenance contract. And some of the items for the pump stations have very, very long lead times. So if we were to get the money for that, I would say we'd be able to use it within the next few years. Any questions?
All right. Thank you for the presentation this evening. I'm going to turn to the board for any questions or comments the board may have.
So you're proposing half the manholes, right, for the 200,000?
I'm sorry?
Roughly half the manholes that need repairs are
correct.
Or right out of ones. I assume
Well,
those
168 have been identified as
right,
needing
but
repairs.
half are covered by the 200,000 you're asking for.
Correct.
I assume these are the worst of the 168?
Yeah. And this is based on a study done by Wright Pierce where they looked at every single manhole
Yeah.
in the town.
And I'm just looking, on the slide has a line that your budget allows for about repairing 8 to 10 a year.
Right.
So the other 84 is going to take 8 years? I mean, is it
Unless we
that
get some-
simple? It can't last 8 years.
Well, based on how we have budgeted, because again, we have to jet the lines, we only have X number of dollars
Yeah.
in our budget. And, if all of a sudden there were a significant need of more than those of 10 to be repaired, we'd have to find the money from either jetting the lines or something.
Okay. How long would a repair last? I have no idea.
Well, maybe some of you would remember better than me. Mass Ave was paved not all that long ago, maybe 4 years ago, by the state, and they agreed to do manhole work. Then in a pretty short period of time, some of those manholes started to sink. So a lot has to do with the quality of the work.
Okay. And then I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask just to make sure I know. Is there any redundancy in these pump stations?
Every pump station has 2 pumps.
Okay.
But as far as can one pump station fill in for another, no. We would have, if a pump station went down, we'd have to bring in a external pump truck.
And the generator would be,
Every pump station has a generator.
okay, so you're looking to replace 2, or 3, actually,
Right.
generators. Okay. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you for the presentation, John. Part of the problem, and it came up in the last presentation with representation, and this is even more skewed, is that 30% of the town, that's probably generous, but probably more like a quarter of the town has sewer. And this is the problem with enterprise funds, and this affects the water district as well. So,
Right, no, I
we're faced, I just want to make sure people understand. I mean, we're faced with putting money that's going to affect everybody. And when this was sold back in, 1999, it's like, well, this is going to be an enterprise fund. It pays for itself. So I'm very sensitive to that. The manhole covers on Mass Ave do affect the whole town. But they have more of they have at least in your presentation, a $10,000 to $15,000 impact to I&I, but they have a lot of impact on people, averting the manhole covers, and so it becomes an obstacle course on 2A, which is quite dangerous. So that one has, a more widespread appeal.
Right.
It's not like I don't understand what the pump stations need and what they require, but again, we are looked at, the amount of projects that we have been faced with well exceed the $1.17 million we have left.
Understood.
And so these are some of the things that we have to balance. I mean, I don't have any questions for you. I mean, what you're proposing is very clear. It comes to the prioritization becomes an issue when we look at these. I think Mr. Franco said it, well, is that we have to find out where to put this money that it does the best good, the most good for the most people. But I do understand what you're asking for. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alonso.
Thank you for your presentation. It was very detailed, like Mr. Alonso just said. It was very clear what the plan is with all of the funding that you're requesting. The only question I had during your presentation, because I didn't see it in the PowerPoint, was the timeline, but you answered that at the end, so I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
By the time you got to me, I think I'm clear on everything, and, just to reiterate the same problem, we got 20 million, if we thought about it, we have $20 million of great ideas and needs, and, $1.2 million left. So.
Yeah, with the water district's presentation, it was clear that they have about, $2 million sitting in reserve, but they have a little less than that, and they have all that money kind of allocated for a project already with his replacing the big water tank. So my question to you is I'm going to echo a little bit of what Mr. Alonso stated tonight, which is I think my concern is a bit about prioritization. I think your request is pretty clear. An enterprise fund, though, I think by design is supposed to kind of foresee some of these things. I think with the water district, the conversation there was about how to react to a new dynamic. But in this case, we're talking about, manhole covers and a pump station, which are known things that need to be replaced on a schedule. So
Right.
My question then is, how much money do you guys have in your enterprise account for projects? You identified in the report that you have a new station's going to be 1.5 million, or a small one's going to be 750. Do you guys have more than 1.5 million dollars?
Well, in the enterprise fund at the end of
Fiscal 22.
22, fiscal 22, there was 2.2 million.
So you have 2.2 million. You've identified 1.5 million in projects. Is there another 750,000 in projects that would pick up some of that extra cost? I see Selectwoman Bertram behind you nodding. I don't know if you want to call on her.
Absolutely.
Jump in.
Paula Bertram, 312 Townsend Harbor Road. I'm the sewer business manager. We had $2.2 million at the close of fiscal '22, but we've tapped $419,000 for this coming budget. Typically, at the end of the year, money has gone into retained earnings. However, we've stepped up our capital plan, and very little money, if any, will go into retained earnings at the end of this fiscal year. Excuse me. And our capital plan projected out is looking like we're going to be spending $100,000 to $120,000 per year, which means we'll put very limited money into retained earnings. And the issue is, just like the town has to have a stabilization fund, in the event that the pump station went down, we would have to bring in a vac truck. We need money put aside for that purpose. So bringing in a truck is extremely expensive. And then you have the repairs to the pump station that have to take place. So it's critical that we have a savings account and we have funding available to do that, should it become necessary.
Okay. So I think that clarifies my question, which is that there's funds allocated for the emergencies. Having a pump station down is extremely costly with having to get that pump down. I mean, you're going to easily, in a previous role, I managed a sewer treatment plant as part of managing property. I was blown away by how much it costs. Blown away. So I think I have a pretty clear picture. I don't have any remaining questions. All right. Anyone from the public want to? Nope. All right. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. So I will say that as we plan tonight's meeting, I think that, certainly I don't think we had awareness of how lengthy some of these discussions would get on the ARPA requests. So I want to extend an apology to the members who are residents who are with us this evening for appointments to other boards. We normally do not have people here after 9 p.m. for an appointment. Usually that's something we try to handle right away. And so I do want to acknowledge that we have many members of the public still here for appointments, and we also have PAC that would like to provide a presentation this evening. So I think the request from PAC is pretty brief and straightforward for $67,000. If you want to come forward and present that, and then we're going to go straight into all of our appointments tonight and interviews.
Somewhat old-fashioned. I'm Steve Walker, 227 Pleasant Street. I am the chair of PAC, but I'm here more in support of Joe McLaughlin, who's the manager. We put together an ARPA funding request some time back, which you already saw, so we tried to focus here specifically on the request for improvements both in the production area and in the broadcast area. The production area, one thing we'd like to do is optimize the use of staff by using technology. For instance, PTZ cameras, which I trust you're all aware of what they are. Okay, these are PTZ cameras. So they pan, they tilt, and they zoom, all from a controller. So one person is handling all 4 cameras here. That's the kind of thing, and specifically that. And also put in a teleprompter. That's something that's very useful for people who are not familiar with sitting in front of a camera. They can have prepared stuff. The other key thing we'd like to put together is what we call grab-and-go kits. This occasionally we get a very last-minute request for a videographer for a meeting that's called at the last minute, and a grab-and-go kit would be set up. It would include a camera, tripod, microphone, audio recorder, and even lights, because it depends on the circumstances. From the broadcast point of view, we would look to improve the town hall environment. So this audio, we were trying to read the logo on the front of the speakers up there, which I can't, but I suspect they're Radio Shack. And we would replace them with something a little better than that. The key is if we put better audio in here at the very source of the audio, then by the time it reaches people at home, we maintain that quality through our whole system. We also want to enhance our remote capability for live multi-camera, such as basketball games, things like that. Takes both wireless technology and streaming technology that we can put all of that together. We're also trying to set up live Zoom interactions. So for instance, with the recent meeting that was called at the auditorium because the audience was so large, people by Zoom could not participate in the meeting. We put a test bed together in the studio to find a way that would allow that to happen. But we don't have all the right equipment yet to make that work. We dummied some of it up. We can make it work, but we need the equipment. The budget, despite your kindly mention of 67,000, we went through it with a fine-tooth comb. Of course, I basically have no need for a comb any longer, so I have no idea.
Certainly not a fine-tooth one.
We brought it down to 50,750. We really were trying to focus on these things that we felt were the right benefits. So the studio enhancements, 34,350. The grab-and-go videographer kit's about $12,000, and improve the town hall environment with $4,400, all of which we feel are items that help both PAC and the population of Lunenburg when we need to get the word out, when we need to have meetings. So this has been reduced from the original request. The benefits to the community was one of the things we were asked to address. So studio enhancements, if we put in technology that helps us get more out of the staff we have, we can get more and better productions done. So if we have a 3-camera setup in the studio with BTZs, we can use one person to run them. Otherwise, we need 3 people to run them, and that causes us issues. The better videographer kits provide more and better coverage of outside events and allow us to be more responsive to last-minute requests. And believe me, we've had 1 or 2 of those recently, so we do try to be well prepared for them. On the broadcast point of view, if we improve the town hall environment, we get better audio at the very end, which actually is what you're seeing on the TV over there, which is when it gets out onto cable, because a lot of people, that's their way to watch these meetings. So the other funding sources we were asked to address, our funding is limited to Comcast franchise fees, essentially, and that's primarily used for operations. So the money that comes in on an annual basis, we use for operations. So salaries, cost of running the system, all that kind of thing. Potentially, the franchise fees will reduce over time because people are reducing the number of video services they get. We're in a curious position because during COVID, some of this went up because people were stuck at home. If they are running short of money, then they start cutting off some of the video services. We do have an enterprise fund, but it will no longer be getting funding from Comcast. We're in around about the middle of a 10-year contract. We don't know what would happen the next time, but the capital money that came in from Comcast that we negotiated came in during the first 3 years. There is potential for a streaming bill going through Boston. We use the word streaming as if it's something that happens fast. Not so much with this kind of thing. But it is in committee, and it's in better shape than it was last year. We have no idea how to predict what and when we might get from that. And right now, we are looking into investing the enterprise fund with the aid of the town treasurer and a company called Bartholomew, I believe, yes. Because last year on the money in the enterprise fund, we got $6,700 interest, which is also an income into the enterprise fund, if this is invested the ways we're allowed to, which typically a treasurer is, we could put that more up to $35,000 a year. That, because we have nothing else coming in to the enterprise fund, may or may not keep up with inflation. And the enterprise fund that we're holding is for, when we get our new studio space, the work that needs to be done on the inside of such a building, which will go up a lot with inflation because it's a lot of things like insulation, special finishes on walls, and the rest of it goes on equipment for new studios and the way things get set up. PAC committee, Public Access Cable Committee, of which I'm the chair, has to approve that, so we haven't done it yet, but that's where we sit. In terms of a time frame for spending, I wanted to put down later the same day, but Joe wouldn't let me. But having purchase orders and things ready to go, I thought would be a really good idea. So instead, I'll let you know the technology is already available. We're not waiting for something to be invented or made specially. We do have specific plans in place, which is what I've been talking about. And we would commit to completing the upgrades within 6 months. I don't know if there was a time that the money had to be spent in, but I assumed if we did it in 6 months, we'd be in good shape.
Well in advance of
Technically, it's money has to be expended by the end of 2026.
Right.
Oh, I think we could manage that.
However, Congress can pull the money back at any time.
Congress ain't pulling.
Would you care to invite questions?
Of course. Well, I didn't hear what your question was.
I don't have, no. I'm inviting
I thought
you
were
to
just
ask
asking me
questions of
something.
the board.
Yes. So thank you for that presentation. Thank you for also advising us of the reduced dollar amount to $50,750. So to the board, any questions or comments that we have for the representative from PAC?
No, thank you. It's all clear. No questions.
First of all, we use this technology that you guys, designed and put together, and I don't think we thank you enough for all the meetings, especially during COVID. I mean, there's a unique awareness and transparency that is expected nowadays. And now with COVID, when everybody was on Zoom, and so meetings that didn't get televised were recorded. I mean, people watch these and they go back to these and they get aware of lots of things. And largely, it's because of the services of PAC. So I want to thank you and your department and Joe for that.
Thank you.
This is clear. I mean, the money is not sizable in general terms, and it has a big impact because, again, it connects people with what happens in town, not only government, but school and general public events like, the Memorial Day event and the graduation, et cetera, is standing out there in the rain. So, to me, I know clearly what you're trying to do, and it makes sense, and it would impact basically everybody in the town. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I do have a question.
Uh-oh.
The question is, I know there was talk about closed captioning.
Yes.
Has this been addressed, and if it's not been addressed currently, why is it not in here? Because I know people have asked about that for people who are, hearing impaired to have closed captioning.
Right. When we looked into it, there are two different versions. One is to buy, I don't recall the number, but it's a very large number to buy a closed captioning system that we actually would install in the room here. The other is to pay for it as a service from Castus. Castus is our server.
Mm-hmm.
And that runs a few thousand a month.
Oh, wow, okay.
So I would love to do it. I don't believe it's practical to do at this point. If you are raising it again, which indeed you are, I'm happy to work with Joe and we'll see if that's the kind of technology that improves with time.
Right. Well, speak to me offline.
Gets worse as well.
Speak to me offline. There are other services out there
Yeah.
that allow it, and that, not live, it wouldn't be live closed captioning, but at least
That's
when the
what we were
recording
looking at,
has,
yeah,
you could put it through a service, and I know some companies that do it, so I can talk to you afterward.
Really want to solve it for live as well.
Yeah, well, that's going to be harder to do,
This would
and
be
much
good.
more expensive to do, as you know.
Yes.
But thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the presentation. Just going
You're
to echo
welcome.
everything Mr. Alonso just said. I think you guys offer a wonderful service to residents. I appreciate all the work you do, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, just to echo, in slightly different words, I mean, the democracy is absolutely dependent on the dissemination of information. So the importance of the service that you provide cannot be overstated. And your request is relatively straightforward. So thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you as well for all the work that you guys do. I believe you guys have already upgraded a couple cameras in here already. So I want to
Cameras,
also
we're
thank you
talking
for
about
that.
cameras in the studio
Yeah.
for the other ones, but yeah.
So I'm just acknowledging that. I wanted to
Okay.
thank you for making those changes.
Yeah.
They've been really helpful. And that's really it.
I know what you're talking about. Sorry.
You do. And so, I appreciate that. And that's really, that's it. I think this is very straightforward, as Mr. Alonso also said earlier, and Mr. Franco, it's really about maximum impact, and this definitely fits into that mold. So,
Mr. Chair, if I may ask, can this presentation be emailed to us so we can have it on the Google Drive, so all of our stuff is together? I noticed that we don't have it as of yet.
Oh, that's difficult. Yes, of course we can.
Okay.
Do I send it just to you?
No, you
or-
send it to Elaine or Heather.
To Elaine, okay. I will do that as soon as I've had a glass of single malt.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank
All
you.
right. So again, I want to turn now to our appointments, reappointments, and again, I can't stress enough that I think this is for me a new one, where we're going to an appointment at almost 10 o'clock at night. These usually happen before 8. We try to make sure people are in and out pretty early.
Move
So-
to approve, everyone.
This is a test. We know they really want it.
So when it comes to the Conservation Commission, my expectation is that we will not be making a decision on this tonight, because there is another interview that we need to have next week, and so there won't be a vote on conservation this evening. But I want to first turn to Sam Welch from, related to the Conservation Commission. Sam.
Good evening.
Good evening. Please state your name and address and your reason for being in front of us here this evening.
My name's Sam Welch. I live at 38 New West Townsend Road in Lunenburg, and I'm here to interview for a position on the Conservation Commission as a voting member.
Okay, so you don't have to reach into it. They can adjust the volumes from the back room. And what makes you interested in being a part of the Conservation Commission?
Well, I have a long history of environmental passion. I grew up in a very politically active family, and even though I was raised in a relatively urban environment, I really valued the idea of conservation and land preservation. I've lived in Lunenburg since 2006, and the one thing that I value about living in Lunenburg is the open space and the conservation, and I just feel so strongly that there needs to be really careful consideration done to land development, zoning laws, so that the character of a town won't change and suffer from development, basically. So that's sort of where I'm coming from.
I'm going to turn to the board with any questions or comments the board may have related to your application.
Sure.
For appointment.
Oh, you know what? I have, if you want, I have some resumes. Do you want to look at these or not? Matter?
You can provide them
Okay,
to
sure,
us.
sure.
I'll take them and pass them down. All right, and I'll pass these down to the members as well.
Thank you.
So we do have your application already. I don't recall seeing this, but we do have your application on file.
So have you spoken with the other members of the Conservation Commission? I assume?
I've been, well, I actually, I lived out of town for a couple of years, and I moved back to Lunenburg last fall, and I immediately engaged with Bob Pease, and I started attending the commission meetings online on Zoom. So I got a general idea of what's involved, and I was very, very impressed by the extent of the technical knowledge involved in that position. I mean, obviously for me, one of my concerns would be just getting up to speed with being a voting member and making sure that my vote is, carefully considered and effective. So that's my main feeling is getting trained so that I can be a good voting member, because it's the one thing that I was impressed by during those meetings is just the extent of the technical knowledge required to make the simplest of votes. And I don't want to take that for granted or have that not be, valued. So that's, I went to the Zoom meetings. Bob actually went with me, and originally I was going to help do trail maintenance. So we went to the large town forest and put up signs there. I have some physical limitations, so I can't do a lot of physical stuff, but originally it was going to be trail maintenance and Conservation Commission meetings, attending those, and just helping whatever way I could. I have a job. I'm a psychiatric counselor. I work in Leominster. I work in human services. I have a history of, I worked in the legal industry for 10 years. I worked in human services, education. Now I'm a psych counselor in Leominster, so I am very familiar with the local community, and I know a lot about what the identities of the different communities are in this area, because obviously Lunenburg is right next to Fitchburg, and it's it's something to consider when you think about development, because it's a land of great variety in terms of the natural layout and demographics. I mean, so much variety that it really makes it a unique place to try and develop something, and to preserve and develop at the same time. So, but getting to know Leominster, Fitchburg, Lunenburg, the different towns, I feel like I've gotten a good exposure to the types of environments that are around here physically. But so I did some trail maintenance with Bob, but Bob and I have developed kind of a cordial relationship over the past probably 6 months, and he's welcoming me to just kind of engage and help in whatever way is necessary, is needed. So.
Okay, good. No more questions for me.
I don't, they don't have an official, associate member with conservation, but I do know that they have people who've sat in as non-voting members.
It's called, what's it called? It's
well, some people call it an associate member.
I think that was what he had originally talked about, and I think that's what this position is for, right?
No, this is a voting member.
This is a voting member.
Yeah.
Because originally Bob was talking about my being an associate, but I wasn't sure based on the information I got about tonight.
Sure.
So.
And are there any other committees that interest you in town, should you not get this? I mean, again, we're not going to be voting tonight, but this is an open question we ask a lot.
Yeah. Possibly maybe arts or any type of, I don't know, maybe, I'm just trying to think.
We have a culture council.
Culture. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, I have no questions.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Well,
No,
more than
Oh, okay.
me,
Okay.
not the board.
Can I leave now?
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for being here at almost 10 p.m.
Yeah, thanks.
Everything that I would have asked you, you've answered already about your interest, your background. I was going to ask if you've attended any meetings with them.
I've attended probably 4 or 5 Zoom meetings, so I know what's involved. I'm actually a member of Mass Audubon, too, and I'm interested in getting Mass Audubon involved in this area. I'm actually part of the Tern Society with Mass Audubon. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, the Tern Society. Yeah, so I would love for them to give me the option to, when I pass away, bequeath my estate to go towards preserving land in Lunenburg. That's my idea, my own personal passion and plan. So I like the idea of my own being able to make an impact myself on the place where I live. And I'm also indebted to the Conservation Commission for what they did literally right behind my house. I mean, I live down below Settlers Crossing, and there was that 300-acre parcel that was going to become that place called High Highfield, Highview Village.
Highfield,
Highfield Village.
Terrace or
And
something.
I think it
Yeah.
was because of the wetlands restriction, maybe, that they ended up not doing it.
They just
They
delayed
just-
for
just
years
dropped
and
it?
years. I don't know. We don't know what the real reason why they didn't build it, but they did.
Is that right? Because, I mean, it would have just completely changed the character of my neighborhood. I mean, 50 colonial houses going in there would have been different. So I feel like as much as I can impact my community in a positive way, I'd like to do that, so. But,
No questions from me at this point, but a thank you for stepping up and
Okay.
holding yourself out to volunteer.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to pick up on something Mr. Alonso stated. So the Conservation Commission typically has an associate membership program. So what this means is certain boards, like the Zoning Board of Appeals, has associates that we actually appoint. But other boards, they've created this associate-like program. And what it is, it's an opportunity for people who are interested in becoming a member to function as like an associate member. And so it gives you time to learn and get exposed to the other members, kind of figure out those kind of small group dynamics, and also increase your technical knowledge. So that way, when a position becomes available, typically those associates are primed to go into those roles, just because of the, as you even noted, the amount of information that you need to know to get there. So if we do not move to appoint you, and again, there are 3 applicants for 2 positions. So if we did not appoint you to this, would you be interested in an associate role?
By all means, and in fact, I thought that was something that Bob and I had already talked about, so I thought that might be kind of in the works, but when I heard about it tonight, I wasn't sure why, you know, if they want me to do the associate, why go to this first?
So we don't appoint, this board does not appoint associate members to the Conservation Commission. That's something the Conservation Commission can do themselves.
And is an associate member a voting member?
No, it's a non-voting member.
Non-voting.
Yep.
Okay.
But you would be interested in being an associate?
If it would help me get up to speed with being able to make consideration and evaluation and, you know.
Think of it as an apprenticeship. That's basically what it is.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. All right, that's good to know that you're interested in that, because that's the usual path for
Yeah, that makes
conservation
sense.
that most
By all means.
appointees come through.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for all your time today, and you also expressed interest in the Cultural Council. I know there's some seats available. So next week, we have an interview with the remaining new member to the board.
For this position?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
And then we will make a decision at that time and then inform you of how that goes.
Sounds
But
good.
again, I don't want to say that either way, however we decide, it has to be one of the 2 of you or 2 of the 3 of you. And so I would imagine that if whoever the person is not selected, I would hope that they would still be interested in participating, in your case, if it's you in the associate program.
Definitely. And how many voting positions are you interviewing for now? Just 1?
2.
2? I didn't know that. Just 2
2
of
voting
them?
positions.
Okay, got it.
So we're only interviewing, though.
Is there any kind of, I mean, if I was ever going to, you said there's 3 people being interviewed for 2 positions?
Let me rephrase that. We have an incumbent who's running who we're not interviewing.
Okay.
And then we have you and the other member who are also running as new members who we are interviewing.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any type of a process where you'd be brought up to speed if I ever, for some reason, was going to be considered for this position? I mean, what is the process in place for training, and I mean, how does that work exactly?
Yeah, so Mr. P's really, I will say, one of his strengths has been really kind of taking new members, new people who express interest in conservation, and through this associate program, kind of guiding them up to speed. For many people, it takes about 1 year to 18 months. And then once you are up to speed, then usually it's you put forward the request to go for the full membership.
Are they still only going to do Zoom meetings, or are they going to start doing it in
At some point,
person?
they're going to have to meet in person.
That's good. And is it still once a week that they do that?
I don't know their schedule off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So if you are interested in the associate program, it sounds as if that may, for us, kind of guide us on what to do here.
Sure. I mean, if
you are
think,
speaking with Mr. P's, you know.
What's that?
If you are already speaking with Mr. P.
Yes.
He can answer a lot of those particular
mean,
questions about how people get up to speed.
Yeah.
Usually there's, you know, there's online things and there's,
right.
you know, courses available through the state, but once people get on board.
Yeah.
And he would know them.
All right. So thank you, Sam. For
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Appreciate
Gonna go
it.
home and go to bed, so. All right. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Next, we're going to go to Helen. Is Helen here? Are you, I don't know, are you Helen? No, you are not. Do we have a Helen here this evening? We do not. Do we have a Dr. Robin Chandler here?
It's me.
Dr. Chandler. Dr. Chandler, thank you for, again, being patient with us this evening, being here until this late in the evening. You're coming before us if you want to state your name and address, and then also to state the reason why you are looking to join the Culture Council.
I'm falling asleep fast, so I'm going to try to say that I'm sure most of us are familiar with the late Roberto Clemente, who was the Babe Ruth of his generation. Mm-hmm. And he very famously said, if you can accomplish something to improve the lives of the people who are coming up behind you and you fail to do that, you are wasting your time on this earth. And I am a fan of that approach to service to community. I'm a visual artist who became a social scientist. I am my doctor reminds me, semi-retired, not fully retired, faculty professor emeritus from Northeastern University in Boston. So I taught a revolving door of 18 to 25-year-olds for 35 years. So a number of generations of young people. And have extensive experience in the visual arts, both locally, nationally, and internationally. So anything else that you want to know, particularly at this late hour, I'm sure you'll find in that catalog. This is a recent catalog from Bunker Hill Community College, the Mary Fifield Gallery, where we not only had an exhibition, but the college, which was mentioned fairly recently by former President Obama, as one of the most prominent community colleges in the United States, Bunker Hill Community College, and I think that we should be very proud that it's in Massachusetts. And the college never had a residency because artist residencies are considered fluff at a community college because of the clientele that you're dealing with and the reduced budgets, and these are state institutions. But we decided that we would find money to create an artist residency, and so we did that the year I retired from Northeastern and stepped into this residency at Bunker Hill Community College, and so it was the inaugural residency. It was a year long. There is no other community college in the country that has an artist residency, and that's the kind of way I roll. The Lunenburg Cultural Council is a smaller scale institution that I'm accustomed to working on, but the direction that the council takes is really up to the council. It's up to you, and it's up to the people of Lunenburg. So it can stay at the scale it is, or I can help you put Lunenburg Cultural Council on the map. You want to decide how you want to go with that, and they'll have to decide too. Right now, the model they use is that artists create work, and then they come and apply for funds from the council. I think it's a little bit backward. It's not what I would prefer, which would be a more assets-based approach. Where are the artists? Who are the musicians? Who are the choreographers? Why don't you have an artists in schools program? There's all sorts of things that could be done, I think. But I'm unfortunately a work harder, not smarter person. So if I had my ducks lined up better, I wouldn't be looking for more work. But I think that just meeting to allot grants to people who produce projects but sometimes don't even request the reimbursement means they didn't need the money. And that money could have gone to somebody else, perhaps a younger emerging artist. So there's lots of things we can do. That's particularly who I am. I don't know if you have any questions for me.
No, thank you. I have no questions.
I have absolutely no questions, but I just have one big, huge comment. First of all,
okay,
it's not often. I don't even know what to say. If there was ever anybody overqualified for the position and a job, and speaking to my heart, because that's what my educational background is in the visual arts as well. I really look forward to reading this.
Okay.
And what your ideas that you just shared with us in 7 minutes or so, 6 minutes. I can't vote for you fast enough. That's all I will say. I mean, it's a pleasure to meet you. I'm sorry that you had to wait this long, but from my point of view, it was worth the wait. From your point of view, maybe it wasn't worth the wait, but from my point of view, it was worth the wait.
Well, I listened well, I learned a lot, and I will sleep well tonight.
I like the ideas you have, and I think you'd be an incredible asset to the Cultural Council.
Okay. Nice to meet you all. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions, but thank you for being with us at 10:06 PM. I'm sure you just want to get this over with and go
Right.
home. I'm Husky, by the way, not that that's going to influence my
Oh.
vote on your appointment.
Go
but,
Huskies.
I always enjoy encountering Huskies in the wild, so
Mhm.
thank you for stepping up and being willing to volunteer for the town.
My pleasure.
Well, obviously, you're eminently qualified, but also I love the energy and the ideas, so I'm as excited, almost as excited as Mr. Alonso. So, I mean, he has a shared background with you, so, I know you had to hang out for 3 hours, but you got to see how much fun we are here, too.
Good expose and personality.
Right.
I want to thank you, Dr. Chandler, for coming. I'm of the each one teach one school of thought. And so I appreciate the work that you have clearly done and demonstrated. You're eminently qualified. And if there are no other questions, I will entertain a motion to appoint.
I move that. Oh.
You're always fast with the emotions. You can never get one in.
Well, I'm very excited about her candidacy for this.
Mr. Alonso.
That's okay. I will concede
Oh,
to
let him
to
do
my.
He's excited.
I know, it's okay. You can have this one. You can have
I
this
move
one.
that we approve Dr. Robin Chandler for the position of Cultural Counsel.
Second.
Any other discussion? I just want to thank you.
My pleasure. Good evening. See you soon.
Hold on, I think we have to vote first.
Many of are in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The motion passes. So congratulations. The first step, being appointed, is we do have an appointment policy in our handbook, and if that hasn't already been provided to you, Elaine will send that out to you.
Okay.
It's good to read that over. We recently revised it. You're also going to need to go check in with the town clerk, which is right downstairs, first office to the left, to get sworn into the role
When?
as soon as you're able.
Oh, okay. When does the office open?
It's open tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
All right. Do we have Steve Dubois? Did I say that correctly?
You did.
All right. Steve, thank you again for toughing out with us this evening.
All right.
I'm sure you had other things you wanted to do for 3 hours tonight, but
Oh, no, not really.
Actually, it is 10:08. Should we cut off appointments now?
all right.
Wow.
So if you wouldn't mind stating your name and address and the reason why you're appearing before us this evening.
Sure. My name is Steve Dubois. I live at 6 Trillium Court. I've lived in Lunenburg for 6 years now. As you see from my application, I'm a retired lawyer. I practiced law in northern Michigan for 41 years. And when I saw the solicitation for volunteers to serve in various roles, and I saw Zoning Board of Appeals on there, I thought, I have something to offer that may be of value, and which I want to do. In my law practice, I represented the city that we lived in for 33 years. And as part of that, I had a lot of involvement in zoning issues, attended Zoning Board of Appeals meetings when they needed legal advice, assisted in rewriting the zoning ordinance for our town. So I'm well acquainted with zoning issues and what they mean. I think, I haven't read your zoning ordinance yet, but I suspect that they're fairly similar throughout the country. So I think I have something to offer. I'm wanting to offer it. That's about it, really.
All right. I want to turn to the, I think you already heard that we have a lawyer here who's going to...
I'm not going to hold his being a lawyer against him.
No. I want to
It's
turn to
all
my
right.
fellow members for any questions or comments they may have.
No, I've met Steve recently, and no, I support his application.
Well, I will say thank you, first of all, for coming forward, and even if your previous job wasn't fully in zoning, the fact that it touched on zoning and the intricacies of zoning is already a head start, because that's, when you get to planning board and zoning board of appeals, it's all details-based and all rules-based, so if you
Right.
have a hand in that and experience in that, it's, it's a great head start, so. Have you sat in on any of their meetings recently or seen them on?
I was at their most recent meeting.
Okay.
I talked to the chairman, and he invited me to come, so I was there.
Oh,
Sat
excellent.
through that meeting. And I was thinking about it recently. I think our city council in this city that I practiced law in, they met twice a month. And I thought over my 33 years, I probably attended about 800 city council meetings, so it's about 24 a year plus special meetings and zoning appeals meetings and planning commission meetings and all that, so.
So you're accustomed to the cadence.
This is
That's
sort of
good.
like deja vu for me, you know?
No, I mean, knowing what to expect, of course, is half the battle, so.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think you'd be a great addition to there.
Thank you.
I was wondering if you've attended any of the meetings. You answered that. So I'm just going to thank you for being here at 10:11 p.m. now, and for being willing to step forward and volunteer.
My pleasure.
I echo that. Thank you for stepping up and holding yourself out to volunteer. You clearly have the great experience necessary for this, so appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, I'm already going to congratulate you. Thank you for joining the team here. And
Thanks.
It's always good to see eminently qualified individuals come forward and offer public service. It's really what makes us all better, is us giving the best part of ourselves to our community and our neighbors. So
I
thank
agree.
you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to appoint?
All right, just got to flip my paper back. I move to appoint Steve Dubois of 6 Trillium Court to the Zoning Board of Appeals as an associate member.
Second.
Any additional discussion? As many as are in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion passes. So the same advice I just offered to Dr. Chandler, we do have an appointment policy. Just make sure that you take a look that over, and then you also need to go to the town clerk and get sworn in. I'm sure you're aware there's conflict of interest training, but it's all in the policy as well.
Right,
Things that have to
right.
be completed.
I also have to get my hands on the zoning ordinance and start reading it.
Those should be online on the town website. I think
I
they
think
may
it is,
already be.
yeah.
But if you talk to the chair, Mr. Gravel, he'll point you in the direction too.
Great.
I would also encourage you, staff member-wise, we have a new building commissioner here, but Adam Burney is really knowledgeable, our land use director. He's really knowledgeable about just kind of the basis of a lot of the zoning stuff because of his work with the planning board.
Good.
It may be beneficial to kind of schedule a meeting, go to the Ritter Building, talk to Lisa Normandin, talk to Adam Burney and the building commissioner, kind of just get a good feel. But Adam's going to be a really good resource.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, looking at the rest of our agenda and being mindful of the time, so I would like for a current business for us to definitively hit number 1. This is a request coming to us from our state delegation, and then and to kind of consolidate basically items number 3 through 5 for discussion at a future meeting, and then we'll hit all the warrants and stuff that have to get approved. So going to current business, Leominster Hospital proposed closure of labor and delivery unit. I was contacted recently by Representative Kuchmarek advising me that this was occurring, and it was before I read it in the paper, and that the cities of Fitchburg and Leominster have both publicly taken stances opposed to it. We do have in our drive tonight a note, excuse me, a note from the fire chief. So let me just get to it here. We do have a note in our drive from the fire chief that just outlines that with this closure, what the impact would be. It says the email from Chief Sullivan. So for those at home who don't know, what's happening is Leominster Hospital is proposing closing the labor and delivery unit. Most people who live in Lunenburg were born in Leominster. Many people who live in Lunenburg were born in Leominster. And so what this then does is anyone who goes into labor would then need to travel to either Worcester or to Concord. I know that many families already choose to use Emerson Hospital for delivery, but not everyone can and not everyone does. And certainly the concern that Mike, Representative Kuchmarek, and I discussed was, what the impact is on the region at large. of when you have someone who maybe is going to labor early or having some kind of complication, that now knowing that the commute to get to the nearest facility, and of course this disproportionately directly affects women, it disproportionately affects the population by only impacting women, and now it puts it in a situation where women's health, which we already know is under attack in this country in many different fronts, that it puts women who are in this process in the unfortunate circumstance of having to be 35 minutes plus away from the nearest care facility for things related to birth. So the ask tonight from them is if we will join with our other regional communities and basically take a vote of non-support for Leominster Hospital to close a labor and delivery unit. I do know that we all can read up on this. If we want to take this vote next week, I think that may be advisable unless we're prepared to do it today. But there is a bit of information about why Leominster Hospital says this is necessary for budgeting reasons. They don't have the money, that birth rates in this area have decreased. But nonetheless, it certainly puts all of the women who are of childbearing age in a really extreme disadvantage.
Yeah.
So I wanted to open this for discussion with that platform. I don't know if this is clear cut for you as it is to me.
Yes.
For me, it's pretty clear cut.
It is for me too. I was wondering, another complication of this or downside does that mean there's no obstetric support? So if a pregnant woman went into the ER, she fell and broke her leg. And then she went into labor while she's in the ER getting a cast on her leg.
Correct.
Does that mean there's absolutely no obstetric support?
Yes.
Well, not any more than would be for the EMTs, right? So the people in the emergency room would be doctors who are trained in it, but not any of the facilities for any of the complications that the chief is pointing out. I think it's an absolutely shameful close of, these are two major cities in north central Massachusetts. Let's take Lunenburg out of it, right? Just Leominster and Fitchburg alone is 70,000 people.
Yeah.
And there's nothing except Emerson or Worcester. Or Air, I guess. I don't know. I don't think they have it. Does the Neshoba Hospital? I don't think they have it.
I believe they have labor and delivery.
As an EMT, do you know if? They don't. Right, so they don't have it either. That's just,
That's scary.
Yeah. All right, so it sounds like we're all in agreement. I'll make the motion. I move for the select board to express non-support for Leominster Hospital's proposed closure of the labor and delivery unit.
That's a second.
Is there any additional discussion? As many as are in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Thank you. I think what will come from this is it will basically be a brief letter of non-support. There's not going to be, I'll work with the office on that letter so that way it's here for us to review next week.
And I do just want to point out, so the process for their proposed closure has to go through the state DPH, the Department of Public Health.
Correct.
So it's essentially on them now to decide what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think that that's in part why the delegation's looking for the support from the executives of all the communities affected, because it sends a strong message that we are not in agreement with this occurring.
Yeah, I just want to say too, if I could, because Ben was born in Leominster Hospital, and I just think about, I'm brought right back to those times, thinking about that night, that whole thing, like, if that was 35 minutes away or 30 minutes away, that would have,
Bad outcomes for people. Yeah. It's going to result in bad outcomes for people.
Yep.
I will say that I still hold out hope that the country is going to come together and put together a healthcare system deserving of the people of this country, which certainly doesn't exist today.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
Well, I hope is with you, Tom, that we will arrive at that point. All right. Next on our agenda is a correction to operating hours listed for the license for Lakefront Beverage, Inc., doing businesses on the rocks at 96 Lakefront Avenue. On this one, I think there was an important question that I don't have the answer to, which is what were the hours that here we go, I didn't even see this memo. All right, which was what were the hours that they had in there initially. So what they're asking for, basically, in the meeting, we have a note from Elaine, and in the meeting, when we were doing the transfer of the license for On the Rocks, there was an indication during that meeting that they were going to stay with similar hours. Current hours for On the Rocks are basically like 12 to 9 or 11 to 9, but the license that they received is Sunday through Thursday from 12 to 12, and that's what, let me rephrase that, what On the Rocks operates out of sometimes is 12 to 9, but they have the ability to operate longer than that. So the license that we issued was for Sunday through Thursday from 12 p.m. to 12 a.m., and for Fridays and Saturdays from 12 p.m. to 2 a.m. And what's being requested is for it to be Monday through Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 12:45 a.m., Thursday through Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m., and Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12:45 a.m. So I think the board knows where I'm going to stand on this, so I will leave this discussion to the remaining members of the board to just discuss what we want to do here.
8 a.m. opening?
Yes. They also sell food.
It's not, yes.
I know. Breakfast?
No.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
Bloody Mary maybe, but.
If that's what the original, I mean, I did ask him the question, and if that's what the original hours were for JK Waterfront, and we have that on file, then I have no problem with that.
Yeah, I also don't see an issue with this, so I don't know if you do have one, Mr. Chair. I wasn't really sure, actually, which side you're on this one. But yeah, I don't see any issue with this.
Yeah, I don't either. I just want to hear what you have to say, though.
Oh, I mean, I don't think, I'm not in favor of bars opening at 8 o'clock or staying open till 2 o'clock when there's residences that live right behind them. However, I do believe that that anyone who buys a home or lives near a bar should expect to hear bar-like noises. But I think the 2 a.m. on a Thursday night is a bit much. I understand that they may not choose to use those hours, but I think we've had a long history here of On the Rocks not being open on a Thursday night till 2 a.m., and I think that's going to become disruptive. But I'm going to agree to the majority of the board on this.
So these were the hours that they had.
Those are the hours that were approved when JK Waterfront, that was doing businesses on the Rocks, initially got their license.
Okay.
They didn't observe those, they self-imposed a shorter time frame, but that was their own choice.
They were allowed to.
As this guy will be able to do if he wants. You don't have to be open those, but these are the limits.
Yep. I think Selectman Imke, that the normal process, as Mr. Alonso just intimated, is that by giving the businesses the most amount of time, it allows them to be the most flexible, to figure out when their business is coming in, make the appropriate decision to make money.
My personal feeling on this is that, you know what, it's a new owner, and you can have people have less hours than this and be problematic, and people have larger hours and not be problematic. Let's see how it plays out. And noise ordinances are noise ordinances. You can't be, 1 o'clock, you can't be like screaming and honking horns and doing everything when you're in front of a residential complex there, so.
All right. So they can't sell booze until 10 o'clock, alcohol, but they could be open for non-alcohol purposes, such as stocking or other reasons at 8 a.m., 8 to 10. All right, is there a motion to modify the hours as presented?
I move to modify the hours listed on the license for Lakefront Beverage, Inc., doing business as On the Rocks at 96 Lakefront Ave, as presented.
Second.
Any additional discussion? All right, as many as are in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, no. I didn't vote. I'm not going to vote. I abstain. And I don't like to abstain, but I'm abstaining. All right. Okay. Motion passes. Next on our agenda, we have Select Board Liaison and Committee Assignments. So I just want to present this to everyone. We're not going to make any decisions on this tonight. In our Google Drive, we have, there's 2 documents here, and one is the positions that the members currently are sitting in, and the next is just the blank. So what I would encourage all the members to do is take some time to explore, what you're interested in. I'd ask for you to send me, and only me, an email that indicates what you're interested in. That will give me the opportunity to kind of plug people in, and if there's any areas where we have multiple members interested, then we'll just talk about it at the next meeting and figure it out. That sound like a fair plan?
Yes.
Okay. So
Just to be aware, Mr. Chair, I will not be here at next week's meeting.
Okay.
So
all right.
I will get you an email about what, committee assignments I have and which ones I would want, but I just wanted to let you know that.
Beyond that, we'll use our discretion as to where to assign you.
That's it. Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're saying that you can tell me where to go, believe me, other people have, so don't worry.
Yeah, all right. I think according to our rules, the chair gets to pick, but according to our tradition, we decided as a group.
I like the tradition.
Yeah. I'm not, Tom, do you know the history of that? Did that come about because?
I've never heard any chair decide for their members. That wouldn't go over well.
Yeah, no, I was wondering the history of it, but.
I have no idea. Until you just mentioned it, I don't know that I've ever read that.
Okay. All right. For the Master Plan Steering Committee, so this is something that we do need to probably think about a little bit more seriously tonight. I know that it's going to fit into the big picture, but there is a meeting next week. I believe there's a meeting the kickoff meeting. So what this is, the Master Plan Steering Committee, we should have an appointee that's on that committee. I don't have it in front of me, but they are going to be meeting next week. I believe it's Wednesday. Anyone want to confirm? That's the 15th that they're meeting?
I think so.
Okay. So I think we should have
next
time.
Thursday.
So we should have time next week to talk about it and then make a decision then. And the same thing with MRPC. So Renee or Caesar, if you guys have any questions about MRPC, just reach out to Tom or I, and we can kind of give you a lot more info about what that commitment really is all about. All right, next we have approval of minutes for March the 7th. For March the 7th.
Yeah, I wasn't, go ahead. I mean, it was before my time anyway, so I'll let you 3 discuss.
I read through them. I didn't have any changes.
All right. No, did I.
So I would make a motion that we approve the minutes of March 7th, 2023, as written.
Okay.
Second.
All right, for this vote, Renee and Caesar, you guys should abstain.
Yep.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Any abstentions?
I abstain.
I abstain.
Okay. 302. All right, next we have warrants and action items. So we're gonna have to do warrants one at a time, so that way I can make note. Lou, did anyone have an extra pen on them? I grabbed red again. All right. So I'm gonna have to sign quite a bit of stuff, Lou. All right, so first is the license that's coming down the table. Next is accounts payable. So to our newest members, everything that's here is eligible for you to inspect. You guys are always welcome to come in and read through this before we do our warrants. So typically the pattern is every other week for warrants. So with this being a week that we're signing, they're usually made available before the meeting if you guys would like to come in and review. All right, accounts payable warrant, the amount of $1,068,163.84.
Are we signing the second one too?
Yes.
Okay.
I probably have to sign this in the packet.
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
That's a heavy one tonight.
We have a payroll warrant in the amount of $1,161,949.96.
This way now.
We have an accounts payable warrant in the amount of $6,093.99.
How come Tom didn't sign it? Oh, he did. I'm sorry. I missed that.
Okay.
This has got to be the biggest. This one needs a forklift.
You sign.
I think one didn't make it down to me.
There you go.
Oh, yep, that-
Yeah,
it's
that's
coming
right.
back down.
I guess they missed the,
Watch that
And
rubber band's
a
gonna-
payroll deductions warrant in the amount of $56,953.55. All right, now we're going to do action items, and I will be taking some notes. Do we have any action items? And this would be...
I have a non-action action item. I just want to say that I was going to bring up something today having to do with the tax abatements and where we stand in the role of the tax abatements, but in fairness and in deference to the town manager being out, I think she should be present for what I had to say, so I will hold this off for 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Alonso. Any other action items? I will offer one, and I'll reach out to the town manager on this one. I think we need to send a communication to all the boards that we appoint, really probably to all boards, but especially to the boards that we appoint, reminding them that they should coordinate their meetings with PAC, and that they should have a Zoom option available. I think we have a couple committees that we appoint that we do not have recordings of their meetings, and so it's a little challenging to follow up and kind of see what's going on.
I would agree. I mean, I just to add on to that, Mr. Chair, I think that we are at the level now, and we have the technology now, that I don't think any town meeting of any board, commission, committee, whether elected or appointed, should not be recorded in some fashion and reviewable by people in the public. Every board. And I think there's only a few handful that don't now, and I think we really need to make that happen.
Yep. Okay. Do you have any other action items?
I did talk to the DPW and town manager about this, but, one of the things we noticed at the Memorial Day ceremony is there was a very low canopy of branches, so, the guest speakers at the podium were like dodging in and out so they could see people. I did alert the DPW director and the town manager to please raise those. I mean, last year, I think a branch fell and hit somebody while we were at the ceremony, so I did ask for it to be raised, so nothing is like lower than 8 feet, so that you get a good view of everything. It's also safer, so.
Okay.
I was obviously out of town when this event happened, and I haven't gone back and watched it, but I know that there was talk in the past, and these names have subsequently been made available, but were the Revolutionary War veterans added to this last one? I know it was starting at either War of 1812. I know Civil War was in there, but a list of Revolutionary War veterans.
Mr. Jeffries read them, do you remember?
I believe it started with Civil War, right?
Okay, all right.
I think there was one
I
that
think
we
it's one or
made.
two.
Yeah, I think he did mention one or two from the Revolution. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, all right, yeah, so those have been added, because they weren't in previous.
Yeah, I can look it up and get back to you on that one, but yeah, because I maintain the list, and so I can look it up.
Okay.
Well, I should say Mr. Passios maintained the list, and he's transferred it over to me. I think I got some of those names from you. You're like, huh? All right, so raise the canopy. Any other action items?
I'm tracking the action items, just.
Got it,
writing
thanks.
it down.
Any other action items? Okay, so upcoming meetings. So what we have scheduled is we have a regular meeting next week that's going to be more appointments, and then the rest of our ARPA interviews. I think that on the agenda, I'm going to flip-flop them. I'm going to put the appointments first, and then have our discussions on the ARPA request afterwards. And then I know that we have... we also have the request from the Worcester County Retirement Board before us next week, which is related to retirees, increasing the cost of living adjustment for retirees. So there should be some discussion on that next week. The plan is for us to have a workshop on the 20th. The intent there is, I know that with 2 new members, and I do want to talk to Mr. Alonso and Mr. Franco offline, because I think the idea is that it will likely be led by the 3 of us, and going over just a couple of different things that will help you, Caesar and Renee, be successful in your role on the select board. So it's really kind of just a kind of fast review of certain policies, procedures that we follow. Want to kind of walk through some of the things that we occasionally come across, like dog hearings and what that process looks like, kind of the alcohol hearings and what those look like. And so just to kind of give you guys that familiarity, so again, I'm going to work with the other members of the board to kind of coordinate on this, but that's the intent of that workshop. And we are going to clear off our agenda, so we're not going to have any other business other than the workshop that day. That's the intent, at least. But naturally, when we say that, as Mr. Alonso and Mr. Franco know, that we never can fully clear an agenda, and there will be things that trickle into it. So that's the intent for the 20th. Any public comments this evening from the public? Stuck around for almost 3 hours.
You get the endurance award. Yeah, the one thing I didn't hear anything about tonight, and I was remiss and didn't do it on the first public comment, is this Sunday at 8:30 is a police and fire memorial service.
Thank you.
That we have every year to remember those that have served the community and have been on both the police and fire department. So just wanted to make that announcement, so anybody that's still awake or rewatches the meeting will see that.
Thank you for that reminder. I think that from what I've read, that every member except for one will be there.
Yeah, I will, unfortunately, I usually attend every year, but I will not be in town, so.
Okay.
I haven't answered yet, but I will likely be there.
Yes. So I think we should have a pretty good turnout that day, and thank you. Next time, just slide me a note. All right. Any public comment, any other public comments from the public? Any public comments from the board? Nope. All right.
Good night. That's my public comment.
All right. So I want to thank everyone for sticking with us this evening. I know this was a pretty full agenda, and next week's will be hopefully a little shorter, but also pretty full as well. To all those at home, hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will see you same time, same place next week. Have a good night.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. You confused me.
Second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Have a good night.
Thanks.